Welcome to What's in a Game. On today's show, free agency is dead, but the money printer keeps going for those who stick with their own teams. We'll explore whether Denver's printer jams or goes brrr for Christian Braun and Peyton Watson. But first, what do the Luka Doncic, De'Aaron Fox, and Mikal Bridges extensions have to do with the Denver Nuggets? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back to What's in a Game. I'm Grace Jean here with my co-host Will Jones. How are you doing today, Will?
Doing good. Happy to be back. Been a little bit, but we're kind of in a lull in the off season. So if you guys are joining us right now, you're a real sicko and basketball fan and Nuggets fan. And I appreciate you guys being here. Hello, Red and Whites, who's in the chat as always.
I will say, of all the shows that we will do or have done this offseason, this is probably going to be the one that's most for the sickos. We're getting into some really nitty-gritty topics today with NBA extensions, but I think I can tie everything back to the Denver Nuggets. I'll be like Charlie Day with his investigation board. What does it all mean?
Yeah.
Okay, a few programming notes before we jump into everything. I will actually be going on Serbian Corner with Miroslav this Saturday. We're apparently talking about Jamal Murray. I just got the Twitter notification right before the show started, and I was like, "Oh, I should mention that on the show." So look out for that one. We'll also be doing the game show on Serbian Corner. That's always fun, even though I am probably, of everybody who's entered in this, I know the least about Denver Nuggets history, but I will do my best in the trivia. Please do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Really helps us out with the algorithm as we try to grow the channel. Our next goal is 1,500 subs. We broke that 1,000 sub mark. And we're currently at 1090, so please help us out. Hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get as many eyeballs on the channel as possible. I feel like the next big subscriber bump is going to come during Eurobasket. That's just a out of nowhere prediction that I've got, or maybe like a pretty educated guess.
We need more Serbians in here. We already love the ones that are here, but I think that'll keep growing.
Well, as long as they, keep supporting us, then that's great. All right, ready to dive into everything? We got a lot of extension news to cover, but first, I want to talk a little bit about Eurobasket, or Eurobasket preparation games, as they call them, international friendlies, or closed door scrimmages, more like, because Jokic dropped 20 points, 19 rebounds, and 9 assists, apparently, in a 126-89, like, obviously way blowout of the Bosnian national team in Team Serbia's first closed door scrimmage. That was a pretty ridiculous stat line, I gotta say. When I saw that Jokic had dropped 19 rebounds, my first question was, did Nurkic even play in this game? Because he usually is like pretty good at keeping Jokic off the glass, or at least like mitigating Jokic's rebounding. And 19 would be a crazy rebounding game, like in any game. But in FIBA rules, the game is only 40 minutes long. Plus, it was a blowout, so I don't think he was playing till the last minute. So the fact that he grabbed 19 boards is pretty insane. Even in a closed door scrimmage. It feels like one of those stat lines. Somebody on Twitter was joking that this was like Wilt's 100-point game. There's no film. We don't know if it actually happened.
Yeah. First Jokic news. I was glad to see that stat line. I wish I could see more.
Yeah.
See some highlights.
It showed that he played, if nothing else, and he was scoring and like doing stuff. It wasn't just like a get out there and run some cardio type of game.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited for more stuff. No like specific highlights to go over though for it, so that's definitely sad, but so far Jokic looks to be in form. Like he just went and dropped that after he'd been just enjoying the offseason. So obviously it was probably low stakes, but
I mean, it was low stakes. Even if Nurkic had played, like, 1, this game doesn't count for anything, it's just a scrimmage, right? 2, even if it did, it's like, this is Team Bosnia. I don't even think they're expected to make it out of their group in Eurobasket. But, actually, just a quick check here to see which group Bosnia is in, 'cause I keep this open on my computer, if it will load. I don't think they're in Team Serbia's group, right? Because Serbia's group right now is Serbia, Czech Republic, or Czechia, who they actually play, I think, in their next scrimmage. Latvia, which is actually like a sneaky a sneaky good team. I know you hate that term. Will. Portugal, Estonia, and Turkey. So Bosnia's not in that group, but let's see, who are they playing? Oh yeah, they've got Greece, Spain, Georgia, Italy, Cyprus. So they're probably not going to make it out of that group. Um, There's a lot going on there. Anyway, yeah, so no stakes in this game, but fun to sort of get some tidbits about the ramp up process to actual basketball being played for sure. I know a lot of people online were just happy to get sort of hints that Jokic is playing basketball, even if they couldn't see it themselves. Um, Serbia plays. I said it was Czechia next. That's their 2 games from now. Their next scrimmage is actually against Greece. I believe Giannis is supposed to be playing in that game. We'll see if it's one of the televised quote unquote friendlies that will be streamed on Courtside 1891 is the platform that is for a lot of these international competitions. They don't sponsor us. That'd be cool if they did. Hey, Courtside 1891 people, if you want to sponsor us, you can. But they charge $30 for an annual pass, and I basically just used that to watch a lot of like the Olympic stuff last year, and I'll probably use that for Eurobasket again this year. Yeah, so we'll see if it is televised. That friendly against Greece is on Saturday, August 9th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. So that would be 11:30 Mountain Time, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so
Did
that's
anyone?
fun.
Yeah. No, that'll be really great at televised, but we don't know where yet.
I
Courtside
think
1891.
like where to watch it. I think it would be, if it's going to be televised, it'll be there.
Yeah.
I've also read articles that said all but the last one of Serbia's scrimmages are supposed to be closed door. So maybe won't be there. But that very last one is the one against Slovenia that we mentioned on our last show. The big pre-Eurobasket Luka Jokic showdown. Yeah, but that's exciting, right, Will? Aren't you excited?
Jokic basketball. I mean, I'm excited for anything that we can actually watch. And I will
Yeah.
use an illegal stream. I'll use anything to watch it. But
Well, you should stop admitting these things on film.
we're all just out here slumming it and trying to watch basketball. And we are going to talk about media rights, which is kind of funny. But
Yes, we are. And that's
thankfully,
maybe related to this because we're gonna find out maybe firsthand through trial and error whether they're going to be weird about clips with Eurobasket. Hopefully not.
yeah, because I don't think it's tied to NBC the way the Olympics
No,
was,
it's not.
obviously. And I think that was more an NBC thing being weird. So I think we'll be okay in that front. But you never know. Yeah, I mean, thankfully for Nuggets fans, we are a little bit out of the woods with not being able to watch the Nuggets in Denver. And so we're used to trying to find any legal ways to watch Jokic play here in Denver. So we will continue to do that if need be for Eurobasket. But I need to actually, personal note, decide how I want to watch next season because there's Altitude Plus, there's all kinds of things that I can get now. So just so many options to watch basketball when I used to feel like it was impossible to find it on some level. But
I mean, options is one way to describe it. It's more like in order to watch basketball, I have to get all of these different
Yeah,
things.
it's true. The world of streaming.
Um, but on a brighter note, this was some really exciting news, I think, for all of Nuggets Nation, not just Nuggets Twitter. But Will, if you could bring up the picture, the black Mile High jerseys are back. The official Nuggets account announced that the rumors were true, that the Black Mile High jerseys would be making a comeback as Denver's City Edition jerseys this year. It seems like this is part of a push to like across the league where it seems every team was given the opportunity to just select a jersey from the past. I think they had to be a City Edition jersey, or maybe it didn't. But to bring back and be their City Editions this season. And I think Denver has the best ones of the ones that I've seen announced so far.
I mean, I don't even need to see them to probably say this is the best one because it's my favorite Nuggets jersey, personally. I mean, I love the old school blue skyline ones, as well as the white variant of that, like the Alex English ones.
Right. I know those are very, very
Yeah,
popular as well.
those are really cool. But these ones are amazing. I have a Jokic one, and I'm just like waiting for them to go on sale. And I haven't seen what the other teams have been doing, but maybe there's some cool ones out there.
I mean, I saw the Lakers are bringing back those weird black City editions with the purple
Oh
angle
yeah,
lettering.
yeah, the
Why? Those are like
pyramid
the worst
letters.
ones that they've had in years, in my
The
opinion.
the Lakers just keep making bad decisions,
Well, we'll talk
except for
about a
the
really
Luka
good
extension.
decision that they made. Um, yeah, but I'm excited about this. This is a really popular jersey for obvious reasons. The Nuggets had it during the bubble. This is a jersey that's highly associated with some of Jamal's best
Mm.
performances. I think both in the bubble or during the playoffs in the bubble and off. They were basically just that one season, right? They didn't use them in 2021, did they?
No, they just used them in the bubble season.
That's so crazy because they're
I
so
know.
good.
It's going to be weird seeing pictures circulating of the Nuggets from this season, although you'll be able to tell unless it's, well, I mean, even Jokic and Jamal look different than from 2020, obviously,
Right, yeah.
but like when you see that jersey, you know exactly when it was from, and now it's going to
Right.
be a little bit different, but I can't wait to
I
wear
think
them and to see them. And for this season, which is
yeah.
already feeling positive, like the vibes couldn't be better. So I just want to buy one. When's it going on sale? I'm impatient.
Yeah, same. Probably pretty soon because if they're making this announcement, it's because they're ready to start making money off of it. I did see just to your point about the jersey being one that is like immediately recognizable with respect to like the era and really like the year. I think it was Adam Mares made this point that like, oh, well, these have the Ibotta logos on them because they're the new jersey sponsor. Whereas what was it, Wells Fargo before was the old jersey sponsor? So you'll be able to tell from that who's got the authentic retro thing versus the new one, which is also looking good. I just thought the Nuggets needed like a good black jersey, so I'm excited about this one. I think my two teams, the Nuggets and the Orlando Magic, have the best jerseys in the league now because I mean, you had to I was really excited about the Orlando Magic rebrand because they basically just augmented everything that was good about their branding with like brightening the pinstripes, adding the kind of glow around the ball in the logo and the emphasizing the stars more. Um, and now Denver has their Black Mile High City jerseys back. And I actually like the rest of the Nuggets jersey slate. I know a lot of people have perhaps more negative feelings about the, like, navy blue. I don't know which one those are. There's, like, statement and icon and association jerseys too, whatever. I don't know the names of all of them, but the navy blue ones, I actually really like those because I associate them with the Nuggets' best defensive performances in the 2023 playoffs. Although those were also some of Jamal's worst games that year.
Yeah.
Since then, he's had better games in those jerseys, but that's kind of what I think of him as. And then, of course, the iconic, just the blue Mile Highs are like a great color, and
Yeah.
like they're the ones that you associate most with the team, I think.
Hey, don't underestimate jerseys and how important they are, which is that they virtually have no impact. But we're going to pretend like they do. And we have two of the best jerseys in the league right now. So that will help
Well,
us
no,
win
this is
another
a season
title.
of aura. This is a
Yeah.
season of aura, right? We've got Cameron Jordan Johnson wearing his number 23, and he's going to be in the black Mile High City jerseys. And by the way, AG never got to wear these black jerseys because he wasn't a Nugget yet in the bubble. So now he's going to get to have iconic moments in these jerseys.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't have to only picture, in terms of Nuggets forwards, Jeremy Grant and Paul Millsap, who has some great pictures in there. I know a lot of the big moments from the bubble, like when he kind of does the thing with the Clippers after they try to step to him, and it becomes the whole thing that, as the lore goes, sparked the 3-1 comeback.
Yep. And Jokic and Jamal are the only players left from that bubble season, which I know was 5 years ago, but it doesn't
Mm,
seem that long. And with MPJ gone, now they're the only remaining guys. So it's a little bit trippy to think about in comparison.
I'm trying to think. Oh, I guess. Okay, when was the NBA draft in 2020? Was it before or after the playoffs? They must have done it
It was definitely after, but it might have been at a weird
after.
time.
It must have been after, because I was gonna say Zeke was drafted in 2020, but it was after the playoffs, so after they were done with these jerseys.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because Vlatko's gone now too. So wow, yeah, it's just Jokic and Jamal. That two-man game that has outlasted. All right. Anything else on these jerseys before we move on to actual substantive-ish NBA news?
No, let's go ahead.
All right,
It's
sweet. So, extension mania, right? We talked, and a lot of people have talked about how they think free agency is dead, and it kind of is, right? When we did our live stream on the first day of free agency, or technically the moratorium period, but it's when the deals are getting announced and all that, right? The biggest things that were being announced were not signings, they were trades. And in some cases extensions. And a lot of those are tied to free agency because of other, like a lot of the NBA deadlines converge. But there are a couple of different uh, stats and like reasons for the decline in free agency that I wanted to share before we get into the specific extensions, right? So ESPN's Bobby Marks did some calculations on this and talked about how under the last CBA between 2017 and 2023, the average number of veteran extensions per year was at 12.3. We are currently in this season at over 19 veteran extensions. Well, it's 19 and counting because there are a couple that are just kind of expected to happen that haven't happened yet. And since the new CBA was enacted in 2023, the average number of veteran extensions per year is already was already around 17, right? So well over that 12.3 per year mark under the last CBA. And there are a couple of different reasons for this. I've sort of alluded to this on the show a lot, how there are lots of different changes to the CBA that push teams and players the direction of extensions. Some of them are um, punishing, and some of them are there's like a carrot and stick aspect to this too. So the first carrot is that players on extensions are allowed to get up to a 40% raise off of the last year of their deal. Previously, you could only get a 20% raise off of an extension. If you wanted to get a bigger raise than that, even from your current team, you had to wait till the last year of your deal expired and you enter unrestricted free agency in order to get a bigger than 20% raise. I will point to the fact that one of the reasons, even if the Knicks hadn't traded for Mikal Bridges in the way that hard capped them, even before that trade was done, it was known that they would not be able to keep Isaiah Hartenstein in all likelihood because he would be he could only get a 40% raise off of what he was making, which was almost nothing because he was like a very cheap backup center. Not almost nothing, but relative to what his market ended up being in Oklahoma City. So that was even more true, or a similar situation would have been even more true in previous iterations of the CBA because the amount of your raise was even less that you could get without going to unrestricted free agency. And once you've got those other offers on the table from other teams, like obviously OKC paying him $27 million a year, you can't, be like, oh yeah, sure, Knicks, I'll take your $17 million a year for, however long. Like, no, that's not happening, right? So that's one reason. Another one is that for rookies who are within the first 4 years of their deal, they are allowed to be under contract for up to 6 years now. And that's like that extends beyond that first contract into their rookie scale extension.
Can they still not extend
else,
they can only extend for 5 years though, but that can include 1 year that they're already on. But you couldn't extend them for 6 years.
You can't extend them for 6 years. That's right. But that means that if you want to, and this is something that I've alluded to mostly with like teams keeping their own veteran free agents, but even in the case of this rookie rule, you can extend them earlier and offer them basically the money that teams might have been willing to offer them later, but you get to like shove that money in their face earlier and be like, extend and like let us lock you in and all that kind of thing. And that's an option that is available to teams, but you can see like that one has the benefit to both sides, right? The team gets to lock up the player earlier and the player gets to guarantee themselves some amount of money and security earlier as well. And so that also favors extensions. That's one of the reasons that Aaron Wiggins is still going to be under contract 5 years from now in Oklahoma City, despite the fact that he extended last year. I can't believe they got him locked up for 5 years. But that's one of them. What do you think of that particular rule? That one seems less like not prohibitive, but it's kind of like a push, like, hey, like here's this incentive here. Like you guys can we're gonna enable this to happen, and then the players and the teams can figure it out from there, like use it if you want kind of thing. But it seems like it's been utilized a lot, especially for these second rounders that happen to work out for a couple teams, like in the case of Aaron Wiggins for OKC. I need to see. I wonder if the Pacers use that for Andrew Nembhard. I don't know how long they had him locked up for when they got him on that deal. I know he's got a good annual contract number, but I've never actually paid attention to how long his contract is. That'd be crazy if Indy locked him up on like 20 mil a year for like 6 years. He's such a good player.
He's under contract till 27, 28.
So that would be okay. So he only signed a 4-year deal. So his agent was like, let's not go crazy here, because that would have been a complete like theft, right? His contract's already a theft by the Pacers. But yeah, so that's one of the rules, and I wonder if we're going to start to see this one used more to do what I've suggested with veterans to a lesser degree, which is offer them a lower annual number, but give them more guaranteed years. Obviously, in
Mm-hmm.
that situation, when you give a player a long contract, that is your commitment to them. And it's not just like a symbolic thing. It is harder to trade a longer contract. It just is, right? So you're signaling
Unless you're
and
like,
saying,
unless you're good.
yeah, unless you're really good,
But then
right?
it's like,
Of
why are
course.
you trading? I don't
Why are you
know.
trading them?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's weird.
Exactly. So you're only giving that contract to a player that you want to be here for some foreseeable future and probably see some kind of upside for as well. Which is probably why you wouldn't see super long contracts for veterans as I've suggested, but you might see them more for rookies if they've got this upside. Jabari Smith Jr. signs his extension with the Houston Rockets, and it's a 5-year extension, and he signs it this summer instead of having to go to restricted free agency. That's a really big deal for the Houston Rockets, right? And for Jabari. Like we talked about that when we talked about his extension because it was the first one for his draft class, which is also for Christian and Peyton's draft class, right? And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you're kind of Houston's taking a swing because Jabari, one, he wasn't a starter by the end of last year. Part of that's just like their team's kind of weirdly structured, all of this stuff, but also like Jabari didn't really make enough of a case to be a starter after Amon sort of surpassed him in the depth chart. Um, he's gonna start this season. I'd be shocked if he doesn't just because of who's left on that team. And he's gonna be making like 4th/5th starter money for the foreseeable future. And probably by the end of his deal, he's gonna be getting paid like a really high level bench player at worst. So that's a good deal for Houston. It's a good deal for Jabari. So it's like, well, he might just be a lemon. He might just be a guy who should be coming off the bench. And that's like how you get the most out of him. And in that case, then it was a theft by him. So that's good because he's got, I think it's 5 guaranteed years. I need to check if there was a player option on the last year or sorry, a team option because Houston loves them some team options. Jabari Smith Jr. I think it's just 5 guaranteed years straight. It is. Yeah. And they were able to do that because of this rule. So that's like, I wonder if we're going to start to see more of those. And there's a couple of other candidates that we're going to talk about in the segment about Christian and Peyton and the rest of their draft class that I think would be good candidates for a similar type deal that they could sign this summer. But I think it's like a good rule because there's lots of guys, honestly, that would benefit from obviously having well over $100 billion in guaranteed money coming to them on their second contract, and teams that would benefit from like, let's get this guy locked up before we start to really experience their upside. This is obviously a situation for the non-rookie scale max contract guys like the J-Dubs, the Chets of the world that are going to get a different kind of contract structure altogether.
Yeah, I was surprised about a lot of the details with J-Dub and Chet in that Bobby Marks article, and as well as just how it highlighted the importance of guaranteed money that teams and players just seem to be prioritizing. And I don't know if do you have a plan to talk about how incentives have been like completely taken out of a lot of these contracts? Like they're pretty much going away, it seems, like bonuses and incentives in contracts. I don't want to jump the gun if you have like a whole thing.
No. I wasn't going to talk about that part specifically, but that was another part of the article. If there's something that you wanted to discuss about that, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, if you are someone who thinks that OKC is a little bit in trouble because they've just given out some extensions, go read that Bobby Marks article. He talks about at the end how it really doesn't seem as bad as you may think, because they don't have the like bonuses that they would get if they became, all NBA or MVPs. Like J-Dub's contract wouldn't get crazy unless he won MVP. And what's the likelihood that's going to happen? Probably not. The only one I see happening for him is like all NBA.
Yeah.
then that might go up
Which
a
he
bit.
made
But,
last year.
well, I'm sorry, first team All NBA, which I
It
still
has
think
to be
could maybe
first team?
happen. Yeah, it has to
Or
be
is it
first
like
team.
escalating? Like
It
it's
still
not
escalates
30%.
down, but it's significantly
Sure.
less. But
Right.
the first team
Right.
I could see maybe happening, and then that could really kick his contract up. But I just think it used to be way more common where the bonuses were counting against the cap, and now that's just going away and everything's just going to guaranteed, which makes sense because you want to know like exactly how much you're giving this player, and especially when you have to like make sure you're under by exact dollar amounts and you need to match people by exact dollar amounts. It just makes so much sense and people feel more secure. So that's another reason why you're getting more extensions like this. And I did think for a second that maybe it doesn't matter because you can just trade a lot. Like you just sign the guy and then if you need to trade them, you can trade them. But like you said, either a guy's not really working out and then it's impossible to trade, or it is working out and then why would you trade him if you feel like you have him at a fair price?
Exactly.
There are times where it's debatable
like
how
it's
that
like
contract's going to age, like a cat contract, and then you trade it to the Knicks and they're willing to take that on. And who knows how that's going to look down the line. That's a really big extension. There's obviously less extreme cases, but
right. And like we've talked perhaps not actually as much on the show, but I've alluded to when it comes to Zeke Najee's contract, even if he were a player that we're like semi living up to that contract number, it's not about the annual number, but the number of years left on that deal for a player that is pretty definitively at best a good bench player. You don't want to um commit that long term the salary slot to a player that you're just not going to use that much. And neither does the team that potentially wants to trade with you,
mm,
right? And that the thing with it's part of why I feel this way about free agents as well when you're trying to sign back players that are yours that are entering unrestricted free agency and getting courted by other teams. You can offer them more years because I don't think other teams are willing to give a longer term commitment to a guy that isn't already theirs, that they don't know
mm,
100% fits their system, their culture, whatever. They might think the player is really good, but the only guys in that change teams that get long-term contracts are like Paul George. And I think the Sixers were absolutely mad for giving him 4 years. Um then again, they thought he was gonna be good. I was more surprised, honestly. I get it. They were courting Paul George. They really wanted to get Embiid like a higher level running mate, whatever. But they gave him a contract based on the 35% supermax. It wasn't just the regular veteran maximum, which I thought like that's
mm.
insane because
It's a
even based
wild
on Paul
amount.
George's good last season before they gave him that contract, he was not worth that. And then they gave him the 4th year on top of it. I just thought that was crazy. I think he's got a player option too. Um,
Yeah.
anyway,
We have a
let's see if Booth only put Zeke on contract. Yeah, I think that should have been a team option. I think it should have been 3 years with a team option on the 3rd year, but absolutely not 4 years with a player option in the 4th year. Like that's worst of all worlds kind of situation there. I think Denver would be in a much better spot. Just because even projecting out from this season, like, yeah, they've made roster improvements, but next year, Jonas is probably gone. They're extending Christian. They're probably going to extend Peyton. We'll talk about that and what that could look like. That they're going to be scraping up against the second apron again, and still they're going to have Zeke's contract on the books for another 2 seasons after this one upcoming. Um, yeah, so it's just that's tough. I don't know what else to say.
it's funny that you're talking about teams being more willing to extend someone when they're already there because they see them every day, they have a different relationship with them. Maybe they just like the Nuggets had a history of trying to reward players before they necessarily lived up to the expectation of the contract that they gave. Like Jamal Murray is one I think of, and then obviously Zeke, which one worked out and one didn't work out. And So it's a tricky
I
situation.
don't
You
know. I
don't.
feel like Jamal had done enough to earn a rookie scale max contract when he got that one.
That's what I'm. Well, oh man, I just
The
remember that.
veteran max is like a question mark because it's like, had he done enough? It's debatable because of what he did during the title year.
Yeah. Well, I just remember the discourse at the time. People were like, "What? Jamal Murray's getting a max? Like he hasn't even done anything
Yeah.
yet. Like
Like
he's."
literally. But we also spent the previous year talking about the fact that he was due this contract. He had not signed it the previous summer coming off the title, right? And then he waited until the summer after to sign because he could sign a longer deal. Like
well, I meant
If
the.
Jamal had signed that max contract right after the title and it was a 3-year deal because at that point he could only be under contract for 5 total years. So it's the same reason that Jokic didn't sign his max extension this summer. He could wait a year and sign for a longer extension on the back end. If Jamal had signed that max extension immediately coming off of the title, does anyone blink
No.
that summer, like when he gets that deal? And then, especially because it would have only been a 3-year deal at that point, right? Obviously, nobody blinks. Um,
But I just meant
but
the
yeah,
first
go ahead.
rookie scale max was
Right,
the
right,
one
right.
that
You
we
have
gave
more
a little early.
experience with that, of course. But I also I've seen the numbers, and I'm like, I don't think it takes that much to get a rookie scale max,
I guess that's true. Probably
especially
back in the day, that
under the old
seemed
CBA.
back in the day. It probably seemed scarier to people, like because they didn't look at it as like rookie scale. They were like max contract.
Well, I know.
You
That's
know?
why I try so hard to differentiate between all these different max contracts, which I'm going to talk about when we get into our um, specific extensions here. But before we do that, just one last uh, rule change. And this is one that we've definitely talked about a lot on the show because it affects our ability to make content. Is that teams are legally allowed now to negotiate extensions and even in the case of, let's say, Nas Reed, who was going to be an unrestricted free agent for the Timberwolves, they're allowed to negotiate with their own pending free agents. So if you have a player that is about to be a free agent, you're allowed to negotiate with them immediately after the NBA Finals before the start of free agency. And so a lot of these deals, like this was happening before, like 100% was happening before, but it wasn't technically legal to do so. So it might have been more covert, maybe more speaking in vague terms. But now you can get all these details hammered out before free agency even starts and then immediately sign that deal. And you don't even have to deal with the ability of other teams to try to court your guy. Um, Even though they probably are, behind the scenes. Uh, and so obviously it affects our ability to make contact because we get things like Pascal Siakam's extension with the Pacers announced the day after the NBA Finals in 2024, right? And then we could talk about that kind of thing immediately. Malik Monk signing for his deal a week after that, well before free agency, and us being like, oh, I'm kind of surprised that he didn't get paid more. Let's talk about why. This summer kind of maybe explains why, because shooting guards are not really that valued, but Sacramento was willing to pay their guy, so they were willing to extend him and for a relatively longer contract kind of thing. Um, but that's another rule that favors extensions because guys are like, "Oh, I can just negotiate my deal now. Oh, they're offering me like this much money and shoving it into my face and being like, sign on the dotted line." Like, yeah, I'll do that, especially since I'm not legally getting courted by other teams in this sort of interregnum between the end of the season and the start of free agency.
I remember
But go ahead.
there was a debate about whether people wanted free agency to happen before or wait. So
Before
you
the
can start.
draft.
Yeah, before the draft. But you could negotiate with your free agents, but you couldn't sign a free agent, obviously. But
That's basically how it is now.
yeah.
But with your own player anyway.
Would you want to see that? Well, free agency is basically dying, but I kind of understood that it was like some teams were retooling with free agency and what have you, and then you could base your draft off of who you were able to get and maybe draft a little bit more accurately. But that's obviously that sentiment's going away now with how things are, so it doesn't really matter. But I remember that being like a discussion and people really wanting that to happen. That was when free agency was exciting, though, and people were looking forward to it, which I miss a little bit. Like, as much as I don't want players to just go to teams that have a huge amount of cap space and have some kind of disaster scenario like the Warriors back in the KD Warriors era, which I don't think would happen again. But sometimes like a team can just get really strong by just adding a free agent for virtually nothing if they have the space. Now it's like, I guess it's a little more even, a little more fair with how you have to negotiate who you're bringing in and out. It's which is good and bad. I feel like do you look, as someone who says you like the NBA to be a reality show, I used to love free agency and look forward to that. And I think some fans are a little sad to see the fireworks of free agency die down a little bit. But how do you feel about that? I mean, are you loving the extension news? And, you know, because you have to look at it from more of a business standpoint than just this player decided to go to this team.
Yeah, I think one, I didn't get to experience that level of free agency 'cause when it was as big of a thing as you're describing in the past, I wasn't following the league that closely. So I will never get to experience that and like compare it to what it is now. To the having to look at extensions as more of like this business type deal. I think there's a ton of drama in extensions.
Oh yeah,
Whether they
for
happen
sure.
or not, how much they're for, how many years they are. Even in the course of this discussion, Will, we've talked about what it means for, and we're going to talk about it a lot with the upcoming specific extensions that we discuss. Whether or not a guy is a max guy is like a status symbol in the NBA. So even apparently taking slightly less than the max deal, however you decide to structure it, um, is not the same. It doesn't carry the same cachet apparently. And so there's that aspect of it and like the egos associated with both players and teams, right? Because teams, whether they're talking about cap space or apron space or tax space, room below the tax line, uh they don't necessarily want to, commit to a guy long term. I think this whole saga with LeBron and the Lakers this summer has been so interesting because it's been about this power transfer from LeBron to Luka,
Mm-hmm.
and also like literally happening at the same time that there is a financial transfer of the Lakers from the Bus family to uh this Dodgers owner guy whose name escapes me at the moment, who
Oh
bought the
yeah, I don't
team
know.
this summer, and that's also happening. So I don't look at um maybe it would be more interesting. So again, I can't say that it wouldn't be better than it is now, but I think I see plenty of fireworks with the way that free agency is going right now, even when there's stuff not happening. Right? All of the drama right now happening with the guys who are currently restricted free agents that are trying to figure out a situation that works for both them and their teams, because the alternatives in restricted free agency, like if a guy takes the qualifying offer, it's a lose-lose situation. And that's the kind of thing that makes me feel a little bit guilty about the way that I look at the NBA, because it's like, well, if Kaminga takes the qualifying offer, I mean, obviously it's a lose-lose for him and the Warriors. 'Cause the Warriors can't trade him. Even if they figured out a trade for him, it wouldn't be for that much because the offer is less annual money. So in terms of salary matching, that's an issue. But also Kaminga is like taking a really big gamble with his future if he does that, because he doesn't know what kind of money is going to be out there in free agency next year either. Um, and so I would feel a little bit guilty about that because it's like these are like large sums of money for like young athletes that have been literally training their entire lives for the second contract, as DeAndre Ayton has you know referred to it. And it's a really big deal because it does set up players for what their future earning potential is going to be. I think there's just a lot of there's actually a lot of stakes involved in extensions in a way that um there are stakes in free agency, but I guess because I haven't experienced a free agency where there are more like higher level players that are changing teams as free agents, as opposed to trades, uh, those stakes would be more about like the teams,
Hmm. Like the
how
fit.
good is this team going to be? How is that fit going to be? Whereas, when it comes to extensions, you're thinking about that, like, what is the salary cap implication going to be for these teams? What are they going to be able to do to get better if they do this extension versus that extension? Are they going to have the flexibility to make maneuvers in subsequent years? And you're also thinking about the fit things. You're also thinking about, how do we not upset the locker room? How do we keep this guy happy enough? It's like this really delicate balance that I find really, the word tensions exist in extensions. And I feel like, especially in the waiting period between them, you've got all of these questions that are building up. And so, Poppin asks, is Kuminga drama a preview of the future NBA? I don't know, Poppin. I do think that, like, Kuminga's not the only unrestricted or restricted free agent who is waiting on an extension right now. And I do think that each of them is in a slightly different situation from each other. And obviously a very different situation from the other players in their draft class that have been extended or just not been extended, and their teams were like, go be an unrestricted free agent, like, we don't want you anymore, right? um I think probably the Quentin Grimes restricted free agency is more telling of what the future of restricted free agency could look like, because this is a good bench player that a team wants to keep but uh doesn't want to overpay, right? I think Philly probably wants to find a fair value for Quentin Grimes, but doesn't want to overpay him based on some really high volume pick and roll and scoring games that he had while they were on a tanking streak at the end of last year, for example. I think that Giddy is a case where it's like, if he hadn't gotten traded, OKC probably just tries to find an extension for him, but obviously he's also the type of player like Kuminga that's like, I should be a starter somewhere. I'm a better player than like the role I've been given, and I'd like to expand my role. Cam Thomas is like his own special box where I'm like, this guy would have been extended any other year. But for some reason, his position group is being undervalued right now, or just not undervalued, but undervalued relative to, previous years in shooting guards. When you look at the fact that Malik Monk got the extension that he got from Sacramento the year before, right? Where it was like 17 million for multiple years. I know Cam Thomas wants 30 million or whatever, but I also think that he's getting lowballed by the Nets, which is like, they want to give him like 2 years, 30, so it's like 15 million a year. So there's a big gap and that gap is represents, again, just to the drama point that we were just talking about before. It represents a gap between how the player sees themselves and how the team sees them as an asset. Not necessarily how the team sees them as a player, because I don't think that teams want to necessarily pay guys how they see them as a player. They do want to pay them probably how they see them as an asset, though.
Yeah,
Um,
we got more of this like
yeah.
game of chicken in a way. Like we have a comment. GMs look scared to sign big contracts, which is like scared. Also, maybe just trying to be diligent. Make the right choices.
Sometimes it's posturing. Sometimes it's like, I want to like sweat this out a little and not like be the first one to whatever. The Spurs didn't care, and we're going to talk about that with De'Aaron Fox. With like, is this like a questionable contract that we're probably going to just sign anyway? Sure, but let's like wait a week or whatever. I think those situations also exist. I think that situation existed with Denver with Jamal Murray last year, if I'm being honest, because again, we knew that Jamal was due for a max contract extension because he was extension eligible immediately after the title. He decided to wait a year and sign the longer extension the next summer. And they waited a really long time to offer him that deal. That we all knew was coming, even though we were like, well, it'd be great if he was making less, but this is probably the number that he's going to make. And that's why I didn't really agree with people that disagree that it was a foregone conclusion because it was like, this is literally what we're talking about all year. The year prior, Josh Kroenke was like, we're going to pay Jamal a max extension, right? That at that media day, they said that was going to happen. And then the following summer, they did that. So the fact that it like dragged on for as long as it did felt like unnecessary posturing. And I think some of the situations happening with other players are a similar thing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about let's go on to Luka.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the concept of extensions.
Yes.
All right. Luka Doncic signs a 3-year, $165 million max contract extension with the Los Angeles Lakers, indicating his commitment to that franchise. And this is basically the 30% veteran max contract. And Will, you and I talked about it a little bit earlier. There are different kinds of max contracts that I want to emphasize every time that we get into these discussions. There's a rookie max extension that is tied to 25% of the salary cap. As an example of that, Ja Morant is currently on his rookie max extension. He's making $39 million a year. Luka is making the 30% veteran max extension. That is for next year. It hasn't kicked in yet because he's got 1 year left on his current max, and then this extension kicks in the next year. He'll be making $46.3 million, or I think 46.9 next year. And then there is the supermax contract that is worth 35% of the salary cap. And our prime example of a supermax contract is Nikola Jokic, who is going to be making $55 million in salary on his next season, right? And all of these are based on the projected salary cap the first year of your deal. And then there's like little fluctuations within that based on the salary cap in subsequent years. The idea is you're a max guy, you're tied to the salary cap, you're getting paid a ton of money. But if the salary cap goes up or down, it's not going to go down anytime soon. Your contract is tied to your salary is tied to the value of the salary cap, basically, right? When it comes to Luka's deal, like I said, it's a 3-year deal. It's a 2+1, meaning he's got 1 year left on his current contract, and then the extension kicks in next season. So 2026-27 is the first year of that. He'll need 2 more years to be supermax eligible. Now, the reason for that, and you'd be shocked because you're like, well, Luka has made first team All NBA 5 times. Why isn't he eligible for a 35% supermax contract? Well, you can't be supermax eligible if you get traded to another team over the course of your rookie contract, including your rookie extension. So you have to basically be with the same team for 7 years. And because Dallas traded him to LA, they high-key screwed him out of an extra several $100 million contract that he would have been eligible to sign this summer.
Luka could have signed a supermax with the Mavs
if they'd kept him, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
And so now the Lakers, they do get that. Technically, they get Luka for a discount because they don't have to get that to that 35%.
Right. And so this is actually one of the rules that kind of favors, like it kind of goes like not punishes teams for drafting well, but it like doesn't benefit team. Like there's no like punishment for a team that like doesn't draft well and just like trades for a star and like they don't have to pay him the supermax. I get part of why this rule exists because the point of the supermax is to help tie stars to the franchise that drafted them. It's also the reason that Shea, I think, wasn't supermax eligible until a few years later with OKC because he had to be there for 4 straight years. The other way that you can become supermax eligible is to reach the 10 years of service, so 10 years in the NBA. And Luka is 3 years away from that. So he's got this upcoming season on his current contract and then 2 more years on the extension. And so he'll probably end up declining the player option on the last year of that extension and then sign a 35% supermax at that point, which is the same thing that Anthony Davis did after he got traded from the Pelicans to the Lakers. Had to wait a few years with the Lakers, and then became eligible for the supermax, which I believe kicked in just this past season. Was his first supermax contract.
Yeah. Well, the supermax was created at a time too where you could spend so much money on your team, and now there's a lot more penalties and mechanisms in place to control that. And so, not that I think that directly influenced the Mavs' decision to not want to pay Luka the supermax. There's tons of other really bad reasons for that.
Look, man, Luka, I have a lot of problems with Luka as a player, but there's me personally, if I were a GM, there's 5 guys in the NBA that I'd be willing to pay 35% supermax to. Luka's definitively one of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the hell, if that was part of Dallas's calculus, I don't know what the hell they were thinking.
Because you have, obviously, the supermax is expensive. It was designed to help keep your star because you could offer them the most amount of money
more than any other team,
than anyone else. But then now, with how everything's working out, it can be a little restrictive because now you're paying a lot of money. You don't have as much for other players in a time where depth is proving to be pretty valuable, you could argue. So, what players are you comfortable just sticking with the supermax? Jokic, Giannis. I would say Luka should have been on there. SGA for sure.
I'm still giving Steph supermax.
And then it's I can kind of see some teams and some players once we get past that group where you start to get a little nervous. But back when that was around, you could just throw around supermaxes for the top. I don't know how deep it would go. What, top 10, how far down could you go towards the top?
Bradley Beal had a supermax
contract. My God.
The Wizards gave Beal a supermax with a player option and a no trade clause. That's why, if I were a player, I would want Bartlestein as my agent. No question. Sorry, Rich Paul. Can we I have a note on this. I was thinking about it just as we were talking about the Anthony Davis example. How much did he want to get out of New Orleans? I get it. You were being recruited by LeBron. You guys were going to go win a championship. They did the very next year. But at that point, AD is turning down hundreds of millions of dollars in a supermax eligibility with the Pelicans to go become a Los Angeles Laker. Does he just make all of that back in sponsorships? That's a lot of sponsorships you got to have to make up for that level of a gap in the money and the years that would have been guaranteed to him. And there was no guarantee that, look, you win a title. The Lakers did end up extending him on his supermax eventually once he got the secondary eligibility. But what if they didn't want to do that and they were just like, nope, you're just a max player, which I kind of think AD is at this stage in his career. And I didn't realize that the Lakers had given him a supermax when he had signed that max contract. I thought it was worth it at the time, so I thought it was the 30% max, not the 35% max. And I think that's maybe part of the Lakers' issues the last few years, even though they have lots of other ones, including, I don't know, complete incompetence at the front office level. But yeah, that's a lot of money to give up just to get out of New Orleans, in my opinion.
We have a comment. Can we admit 37-year-old Steph is better than Jamal, 28-year-old Jamal?
Yes. Steph Curry is still an all-time player. I would trade Jamal for Steph today.
Steph's one of the only people that I would be like, well, I guess there'd be more than just Steph, but he's such an easy answer of, I would love to have Steph next to Jokic.
I'm immediately I'm not worried about the fit at all. Not worried about the fit at all, and it's going to be glorious. Absolutely. Although we'd need a ball handling shooting guard. someone that can do a little bit more with the ball in their hands to complement that,
I guess so.
or like a three. We'll see like how Cam Johnson sort of fits that kind of thing. But
Mm.
Steph also makes more than Jokic right now because he makes a little bit. His contract is there is something above the supermax right now, and it's this I forget what they call it, but it's like if you're a vet, I think you have to be in the league for like 12 plus years or something. You can make like 105% of your previous year's salary, and that's what his extension is. So he's currently making like 38% of the salary cap. So you are like a little bit literally capped in some of the other things that you could do in that situation, but I'd still do it. Yes, we can admit that. I don't think that's an insult to Jamal
Yeah,
Murray at all,
no,
by the
no, no.
way.
Not at all.
It's
Well,
a
yeah.
testament to the player that Steph has been able to maintain himself as. Like 37-year-old Steph Curry is a top 7 impact player in the NBA. That's just like what it is.
But it may not last for too much longer. I mean, if you're a Steph
They can't
fan,
keep getting away with this.
yeah. I mean, he's getting older, so it's like it's not going to last forever. But his game is pretty translatable, I think, to an older player. Like he just kind of runs off ball and shoots threes. Like he can do that for sure. He doesn't need like explosive jumping ability and all that, though. He can be good at getting downhill, and his rim finishing is still amazing. But yeah, let's talk about the Nuggets aspect of this all with Luka
Yeah.
to kind of tie it
So
into
yeah,
our
back
team
to
here.
Luka Doncic here. This was a lot of people's question after this extension happened. Is now that Luka has committed himself to the Los Angeles Lakers for the foreseeable future, and because Jokic did not sign his extension this summer, should Denver be worried that Luka will lure Jokic to the Lakers in free agency in 2027? It would be
I would say absolutely no. I have no concern about Jokic wanting to go to the Lakers at all.
confident.
Yeah, I'm so confident in that. It just seems like, I mean, LA
Has anyone
is
told
the
Jokic that a Bronco is a horse? Has anyone told him that yet?
yeah. The Lakers are the spotlight is very hot in LA. It is burning and bright, and Jokic doesn't want that. I feel like Denver was a perfect market for his personality. He likes the connections. I think he likes consistency. I would be so shocked if he would leave Denver, and definitely not for LA. I get that Luka is there, but unfortunately, Luka has now made himself the enemy. And I'm sure that
I
they'll
mean,
have
he's
a
been
fun, friendly rivalry as time goes on. But, you know, when that trade happened, I said there's 0% chance that Luka becomes a Nugget now, like that night. That's what I
yeah,
said. And
absolutely.
obviously,
Yeah,
some people were
he's not leaving the
holding out
Lakers,
hope.
dude.
They were holding out hope that he
He
could
talked about
not
how he loves the
extend.
water, dude.
Yeah. It just seems so unlikely, especially because we are seeing this trend where players are just extending where they're ending up. And maybe you could trade for them or like try to, maybe something happens where he's not happy and asks out. And that could still happen potentially. But I just felt like the extension was going to come quickly. I didn't think it'd take this long, but it happened. So I'm ready to fight Luka.
Besides Thomas Bryant, has anyone ever initiated a trade request from the Los Angeles Lakers?
No, but they really should start.
Yeah, I agree. I look, maybe, but I doubt it, right? Like I said, Jokic didn't sign his extension this summer. It's funny because it's crazy how 0 to 60 this could go because regardless of whether Denver wins the title next year, and the odds are that they don't win the title next year. Obviously, we're hoping that it happens, but the odds are that it doesn't because winning the title is really hard. Um, Jokic is extension eligible again next summer for a bigger deal. If he says no, then the panic meter goes from like a 10 to like a 99.
I think
because
that
there's no
yeah,
reason for him not to extend next summer from a financial perspective. Um,
he will extend.
yeah,
There's no way he won't.
so I'm just saying, possible. But also, there's no reason to panic at this particular moment, or very little reason to panic. Let's wait a year. Let's see what happens, right? Um, let's see. All right, let's talk about the extension that happened the very next day. So Luka Doncic and De'Aaron Fox were both extension eligible on the same day, but Fox did not sign his extension on August 1st. He signed his extension on August 2nd. So Spurs decide to fork over a 4-year, $229 million max extension to De'Aaron Fox. This is another 30% of the cap, of the salary cap, veteran maximum. Uh, I was surprised. Obviously, this is different than Luka's deal because Fox is not going to be somebody that's going to be supermax eligible. He's not trying to get to the 10 years of service. He's trying to sign the longest deal possible. I was surprised at the length of this deal. Technically, Fox was eligible for a 4-year contract extension because he's got 1 year left on his current deal. And he was max eligible because he's surpassed the 7 years of service to become a veteran maximum guy. He's a one-time All-Star. It was 2023, the year that the Kings made the playoffs. It's crazy to say the year that the Kings made the playoffs because it's literally happened one time in the last 20 some odd years. And the Spurs obviously trade for him mid-season, right? And then they basically sign him as soon as he becomes extension eligible. They sign him to the max deal that 100%, if Fox had stayed with the Kings, this is what the Kings would have given him, right? They want to lock him up. They give him as much money as possible. He's their best player. He's their most fun player. He's who they were building around, or ostensibly. It's the Kings after all. But I'm surprised that the Spurs didn't at least wait a little, but it seems like they're not an organization that does the posturing too much. But what did you think about this deal when it happened initially before we talk about the backlash? Because there was a lot of backlash to this contract extension.
Hmm. I didn't. I guess I was just a little bit surprised because there seemed to be some drama brewing with them maybe not even wanting to prioritize Fox as part of the organization with other guards in the pipeline and young players in the pipeline. And I thought that kind of made some sense, but it would be strange to shift off Fox so quickly after they got
After a trade,
him.
yeah.
Yeah, so it was like a mix of like, okay, I guess that happened, and now there's not as much drama to talk about from that front. But now you have the logistics of the extension to kind of pick apart, if you wish. And yeah, I guess it's like pretty long, but again, I think you could still trade Fox. I don't see his value like tanking in any crazy way that there's no way the Spurs could move off of him.
Yeah,
So I don't
he's got
really
a certain
mind.
floor, right? Where it's like, yeah, this maybe is like a slightly negative value contract, but he's not going to be like Bradley Beal on a max contract, let alone obviously Beal was on a super max, which was insane. Yeah, it seems to be in like the Spurs organizational DNA. They seem to take care of guys when they can. They don't like drama in and around their organization. And I have to imagine the fact that Fox, you know, when all this was going down with the Kings and the lots of drama with the Kings this year, Fox was like, I want to be traded. Not an official trade request, but Rich Paul just putting the feelers out in the media and all this stuff. I find that interesting. I wonder how often we get official like trade initiated trade. Obviously, there are situations where guys want out, right? I guess Jimmy Butler was another example. But Fox wanted out, and he had a couple of different destinations in mind. It was basically the Spurs, the Rockets. I can't remember if there was another team in there, but he wanted to be closer to his wife's family that is in Texas. Um, So that was part of the reason for the Texas teams. But he also said, like, hey, I want to go play with Wemby. Like he said, that was his top, team and then the Spurs like figured out a way to make that trade happen. And I don't know how often that has happened with the San Antonio Spurs. Obviously, they've been able to pick guys up in trades, not necessarily all-star or like sub-all-star level players, however you want to define De'Aaron Fox. They've been able to pick up guys up off of waivers and kind of make things happen in the past in terms of finding diamonds in the rough. But I don't think they've had a situation like this where a guy was like, I really want to be part of this organization. Please trade for me. Right. And so they did it. And I think they were like, yeah, we're going to make good on this. We're going to pay this guy. This is a good player. He wants to be here. Hard worker, all of this stuff. And so I wasn't shocked that the extension happened. There was some of the drama about the fact that the Spurs drafted Dylan Harper, but it's one of those things where it's like, we have the second overall pick and he's very clearly the second best player in this draft class. So we're not going to take him. Also, Dylan Harper's going to be a rookie. Who knows, especially a rookie guard, who knows how long it takes him to be like a good NBA player. Meanwhile, Wemby is getting better and better each day, and he wants to be competitive right now. So it's not like we're going to turn over the reins of our franchise to a 19-year-old that isn't Wemby, right? In the case of Dylan Harper. So not surprised that it happened, but I was surprised about the years. I want to talk about the backlash to this extension in the context of a non-extension that has happened, hasn't happened yet. Trae Young. It was reported that Trae Young was disappointed that Atlanta hasn't offered him a contract extension. The way that it was reported is that they haven't offered an extension at all, but I suspect that, yeah, I guess it's one of those things where it's like, if you're not offering the max extension yet, you're probably not going to offer a smaller number unless you're sure you're not going to immediately piss the guy off. But it seems like he's already pissed off that he hasn't gotten an extension, even though the word sent out to the media here was disappointment. Trae Young and De'Aaron Fox were talked about over this last week as players that were not worthy of max contract extensions. Because in the case of Fox, he's just a one-time all-star. He's probably not going to fit next to Wemby. The Spurs fit is questionable. All of these reasons. There's lots of reasons that you could have for the Spurs not wanting to offer Fox a maximum contract. In the case of Trae, it's like Atlanta has been like the same on the floor with and without him over the last few years. He's too ball dominant. He doesn't play well with other good players, although I don't know what the data is for that, because the best player that he's played next to is probably Jalen Johnson. Like, I know DeJounte Murray was over there, but like, it's DeJounte Murray. A worse guard than him. So it's not like Trae has ever played with a player that is better than he is, right? Do you think Trae is going to get a max extension from Atlanta? They're not in a situation like the Spurs where they have another player that's like in the pipeline that's going to be, they have to worry about them getting a max extension down the line in terms of trying to worry about their financial flexibility.
Oh man, yeah,
And he
feel
is
like
definitively their best player right now.
We were just listing players who you would feel comfortable doling out this much cash to. I don't think Trae would be in that tier. But sometimes you just, like we did with Jamal, sometimes you just have to do it because that's the guy in your organization. I do think it is kind of strange. I like what they did. I think the Hawks are going to be pretty interesting as a team. I think they made some good decisions. And you know, I was almost surprised. I thought they'd move off Trae sooner than they'd like retool around him in this way so quickly. To move off of him or not sign him would be a little bit strange, I would say. But I'm not sure when or what
especially
the holdup
this late in
is.
the summer.
Do they want to test Trae out with this team because it's like arguably one of the best teams he's had? So if it doesn't work out or he doesn't look that great, does that then tell you something about Trae? Is it a little bit of a test to see how he does? I'm not sure, but seems maybe like it's heading along those lines. Chat is actually debating Trae Young and Jamal Murray a lot in the comments, and they're wondering if you would ever trade Jamal for Trae.
I personally would not do that, but I think there's an argument for it. I think that Trae, Jamal, and Fox, and this is kind of why I brought all these three players together in my notes, are a similar tier of player. Obviously, Trae has made multiple All-Star appearances, albeit in the East. He's the best offensive engine of the three of them. But and again, we don't have the evidence for it because Trae has never played with a player that is even arguably better slash more impactful than he is. And the best sample size of that you could argue they have is early season Jalen Johnson before he got injured again, right? And misses another, 50 or so games this last season. But Fox and Jamal have shown the ability to like play off of in the case of Jamal, a clearly better player. In the case of Fox with Domantas Sabonis, it's like questionably better depending on the night and the matchup, right? Maybe Domas is their most important regular season player, but Fox is clearly their best player when they had their playoff series against the Warriors, for example, right? Yeah, so I think there's an argument to be made. I do think that the concerns with Trae are very real. The defensive concerns are incredibly real, and the limitations that you can have on your team defensively, trying to build around a 6'3" guard are real. But I also think that Atlanta has literally built their team around Trae. The whole idea right now with this current team alignment is they've got Trae, they've got one other two-way player in Jalen Johnson, and then everyone else, well, and Kristaps Porzingis, I guess. But I mean, how healthy is he going to be? It's not like he's in their long-term plans either. And then everyone else is defensive, right? Defensive or middling slash limited offensively in terms of creation, sometimes in terms of play finishing even, right? Which is part of the reason that I don't understand people being exceedingly low on Trae in this discussion. Like, again, if you want to be low on Trae getting a max extension, I think you also have to be low on Fox getting a max extension from the Spurs. But part of the argument here is, okay, I can understand them being like, look, I don't think the Hawks should give him a max. And I think if you're not willing to extend Trae this summer, you have to be willing to move on from him. And it doesn't seem like the Hawks are willing to do that, because if you want to move on from the guy, you should probably have just traded him at the beginning of the summer or last year or the year before that when his stock was higher, right? Because there are other teams that could have used his skills. Like, it was I don't know if the Spurs were actually ever like genuinely interested, but there were conversations that they would be interested in a Trae Young or a Darius Garland type. They were looking for a point guard to pair with Wemby. Eventually it happened upon Fox, who decided he wanted to go there, right? And he's not the same kind of point guard as those guys. And Trae, as a point guard, is probably that's tough because Garland has been so down. I was gonna say up and down, but down in the playoffs. Trae has at least been able to show that he can make offensive impact in the playoffs in a way that Garland hasn't, and obviously injuries have played a part in that. So there's a lot of like arguments between these guys, right? But I think that it's that we can agree that they're probably within the similar tier of player. And the question is, do these like sometimes, or in the case of Jamal, no time all-stars that are not, they're not all ball dominant, but they're all point guards and they all are important for your offense. Are they worth a max contract? And it's like, well, if you want to keep them, you probably pay them a max contract, because I think, especially in the case of Trae, maybe even more so than Jamal, because Trae is a better offensive engine. There are teams at the bottom of the league right now that would love to have a talent like Trae Young. there are teams that haven't made the playoffs since Trae's rookie season, right? I was arguing with a Hawks fan online. And, like, I get it. If a Hawks fan is like, I'm ready to move on from Trae, I'm ready to be done with this whole experience. All right, fine. Like, you're ready to tank and you want to just like tear it down and start over again. That's fine, right? But if part of the argument is like this guy isn't worth this money, it's like, well, you're worth the money that teams are willing to pay, right? That's just how the labor market works within the NBA. And I feel pretty confident that there are 2 to 3 teams that'd be willing to give Trae a max contract. Um, and so, yeah, I think, bup, bup, bup. I think, the discussion around these 2 guys, Trae and Fox, has kind of fallen off the rails because, again, like, if you're saying the Spurs shouldn't have given Fox the max, like, sure, but the reason they give him the max is because he left a really bad situation in Sacramento, but a team that was willing to give him that money. Like, it was a bad situation in Sacramento, but the Kings were absolutely gonna give Fox this 4-year extension, right? In the case of Trae, it's like, what are the Hawks doing? If they want to tear down and rebuild, then, like, trade him. Like, because what are you doing? I don't know. Any other thoughts on Trae and Fox?
I think there's a really good argument that they are in a similar tier. Trae's probably a little underrated. Fox might be a little overrated, but I do think Fox's value was higher and he was more well respected as like an established player in the league, and he was more sought after than Trae. Like there was more teams that were interested in Fox than Trae for sure. But yeah,
I guess
like
the question, because Fox, I think, like, people could picture, like, okay, I could see this guy as like a number 2 on a contender. Whereas with Trae, it's like he's never played with a better player, so it kind of goes like against him. As much as like I'm making the argument, it's like, well, I think you should give this guy the benefit of the doubt because you don't know whether or not he could play with a better player than him. Uh, because he's been so ball dominant. But he's been so ball dominant because he's been the best player on his team for like by far for a very long time. So there's no reason for him to be like, okay, you DeJounte Murray. DeJounte Murray had 28% usage when Trae was off the floor in Atlanta, which is insane. That's higher than like Jokic's usage in 2023, right? And I think Trae like it basically has that usage when they shared the floor, which is like not good. But they were the best players on that team, so like, what else do you want them to do, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, and it's hard. They're different. There are different archetypes, even offensively, in their body types. Same position, they play differently. I love players who, like, if you count assists and points and total points added through points and assists, I love players that are super high on that. And Trae is one of those players. So I'd definitely be going against myself to say that I don't like how Trae plays because of what he brings to the table in those regards. That's why I love Jokic and why I kind of dog on Shea a little bit, even though, you know, Shea's arguably the second best player in the league, if maybe third best. But yeah, I know Trae's underrated. It's weird that he's in this situation. I think this team's going to be good, and he'll probably show once again his value, and he'll probably get a max. Because I just think once he has a more consistent team, he'll show that he's pretty good.
I do think Atlanta will probably try to get like a shorter deal done, like a 3-year extension, and probably no player option. On that, I don't think they have a reason to put a player option on that. But yeah, especially on a shorter deal with a good player. That's my prediction. I think they're gonna do that, and they might like front load it so that it's like descending in some way. There's different ways that you can structure these things, but I think ultimately it's gonna average out to 30% max value. Multiple time All-Star, has been the best player on this team, because otherwise, again, it's like, if you're not extending Trae, then trade him, because clearly you want to rebuild, because without Trae, you're talking about a team that's like not doing anything anyway, which is fine. And you want to rebuild around Jalen Johnson, that's fine. Then like trade him, like trade Trae. All right. Last extension, veteran extension that we got here. Mikal Bridges signs a 4-year, $150 million deal with the New York Knicks. This is pretty close to the maximum contract extension that he could have gotten. He's moving up from 16% of the cap this year to making 21% of the cap next year on his deal. He's going to be making around basically around what MPJ was making, right? In the high 30s, and then I think he leaps into the 40s in the last year of this deal. A couple of observations about this extension, which actually happened before all of the guards that we just talked about. He is eligible to get traded before the trade deadline because they didn't wait too long. This was something that, for all the people that wanted to, complain about Jamal last season, that annoyed me about the way that the Nuggets went about his extension last summer was like, "Okay, if you're trying to trade him, like, get the extension done sooner so that he's trade eligible by the deadline." They didn't do that. But the Knicks did this, and they gave him a player option, it seems like, to get this done sooner. And also, I think him taking the slight discount that's like $1.5 million discount per year off of the most he could have signed for, helped to get that player option as well. There were reports of discord in the Knicks locker room this season, including, and probably most famously, Mikal being unhappy with how much Tibbs was playing him, and him making comments to the media about how Tibbs should, and sort of like it was gentle nudging, but it was very like, "Oh, hey Tibbs, you should use these bench players more because they can be really helpful." Will Mike Brown, the Knicks' new head coach, fix all of this, or will Mikal be wearing a different jersey by the trade deadline?
I don't know if by trade deadline, but I could see in the off season him being traded. The East is going to be pretty easy. The Knicks are going to have a high seed. Would they move off? It depends on who they could get, but I don't see them being in a desperate enough situation out east. They'll be in a pretty good spot.
That's true.
Though
how bad could it possibly be?
They should recognize the West is insanely good and that they probably would lose in the final should they make it there. They really want to stay competitive, get aggressive. But
I do think the Knicks are still a tier below the Cavs in terms of being a regular season team. So if they had designs on being the 1 seed, it's probably not going to happen. But the Knicks have played this Cavs core before. It's really just Jalen Brunson and Mitchell Robinson because a lot of the Knicks have changed since then. I don't think that Brunson is like afraid of the Cavs because they kind of like dogged them the last time that they played. So he's probably not afraid of, and I think they didn't have home court in that series either. But, if it's like, oh, the Knicks are like fighting with the Pistons for the 4 seed, come trade deadline time, and there's like locker room discord because they're like, and like, who's the 2 seed in that situation? The Magic?
Let's hope.
Yeah, yeah, I could. I think I agree with you. It's probably not going to be until the offseason, especially because of the length of his deal. But, if they were trying to shed salary, it's easier to trade Mikal during the season when he's making less money now and trading for like a contract making that less money than before his bigger number kicks in next season. So I could see that happening, but they spent a lot of draft capital to get him. So I was not surprised at all that this extension happened, or that it was the years, or that it was the player option, just because it's like the Knicks have too much invested in him to not give him everything in this case, which was the money, the years, the player option. Yeah, so I just had here, like, how bad would it have to start out for New York to seek a midseason trade involving any one of Cat, OG, or Mikal? Like, what is the situation in the Eastern Conference for the Knicks? Like, I feel like if they're not a top 4 seed in January, that is pretty catastrophic when you're talking about the state of the Eastern Conference right now.
If they had no injuries or no circumstances that would explain it, then I would say like if they were in play-in range, that's when they would panic. I think
Ooh,
they
oh
could
my God. I don't
be.
even know how you get there. I don't even know who the 7th team in the East is going to be.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know. The East is always weird. I just can't predict it. It's so
Yeah.
strange. And sometimes teams are down there for a while and they rock it up and it's looking like they're just falling off somehow. And then you have the Heat, who are the 8th seed and go to the finals. So you just don't know. I mean, I expect that the Knicks will be fine. They have so much talent. They absolutely crushed us last season. It's hard to imagine them being out of the top 4. So I don't know. I just don't see them doing a trade deadline trade, especially with the trend of the NBA. Like we saw so many trades in this offseason and barely any trades at the trade deadline. As much as people want
Yeah.
stuff to happen at the
When the
trade
trade
deadline, it
deadline
just
was
does not
this,
happen.
we did have like a pretty noisy trade deadline this year, like relatively to the last few years. And it might be one of those things where the previous year,
Oh
the
yeah,
off
Butler.
season, we had Jimmy, obviously we had almost KD, right?
Oh yeah.
And then he basically vetoed that, which is funny.
Hmm.
We had Brandon Ingram, right? Any other big like who were the big role players that changed teams at the trade deadline? It was the thing is, Will, the Nuggets did nothing. But the Nuggets were like one of 2 teams that did nothing at the trade
Yeah.
deadline. I think everyone else was making moves, but it wasn't necessarily all big moves. And obviously it seemed quiet to us because we were like internally screaming that nothing
Hmm.
was happening.
I think we'll know. You get a track on those types of moves that are building momentum, or you know that a team's looking to shop a player, or a player himself is disgruntled and looking to move. And you usually hear about those things, and then they either resolve at the deadline or they don't. I don't see a ton of shocking moves at the deadline, but they can still happen, obviously.
Well, you gotta have shocking. We okay. Wait, we're this is dumb because we literally forgot Luka Doncic got traded mid-season to the Los Angeles Lakers. That's pretty big, like the biggest trade in
Oh yeah,
sports
that was
history
mid-season. Jesus,
happened.
that felt like 2 seasons ago to me for some reason.
I know. Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah,
I
but
feel
that
like
is
that
an
trumps
exception.
everything. That's a loud trade deadline. Then we had the Lakers tried to trade for Mark Williams and then rescinded the trade. Like there was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff that happened this trade deadline,
That's
I
true.
feel like.
But it just may not be like,
I don't know how much bigger you get though. Like
well, that's
what is
not
it
going to
that you're
happen
looking
again.
for?
I'm just like to the level of moving a cat who was a really big contract. It would be hard to move into the right situation. I could see maybe Mikal Bridges being traded, but nah,
Honestly,
I just think it's too easy.
I could see them moving Cat just because there are so many teams that want any kind of center.
Okay,
Doesn't
yeah,
matter
that's
if they're a
true.
good defender or not, they just, like, want a big, and so you could see, like, one of these bottom feeder teams being like, "Let's upgrade our center position and then, like, see how far we could get." Like, let's say I could see the Hornets making that kinda move. Um, yeah. Or, like, if the Suns are like, "Okay, we're not trying to be an actual tanking team." Booker and Cat would be a very
Which,
funny duo. I'm just
yeah,
saying, this stuff is possible. We should
yeah,
definitely we should do a ranking of our top 5, like, shock moves. Moves that would shock us if they happened mid-season, and then we wouldn't be shocked because we predicted them. Alright, anything else about the Mikal Bridges extension, the Knicks, any of the veteran extensions that we've talked about
no,
before we get to the young fellas? Alright.
nope.
Let's talk about Christian Braun. Christian, his middle name is Nicholas, right? Christian Nicholas Brown. And does Peyton have a middle name?
I do not know.
Unclear. Uh, Christian Brown and Peyton Watson are extension eligible this summer for rookie scale extensions. And as we've talked about multiple times on the show this summer, I am worried about what those numbers would be. However, the landscape that has been shaking out over the last month or so with respect to other rookie scale extensions from their draft class is kind of making me question my level of concern, right? The 2022 draft class in the first round, guys, anyway, have largely been unpaid, right? Yet to be paid, with the exception of just a few guys. Obviously, the big name max contract guys like Paolo, J-Dub, and Chet have all been paid. They've all these guys have 25% rookie scale max extensions guaranteed. Paolo, if he made all NBA, could make up to 30%. Same thing with J-Dub. Chet has no escalators in his contract, as Will alluded to earlier, so that's annoying. So I'm like, man, if Chet made all NBA, that would put OKC in a financial bind. But it's not going to happen because he has no escalators in his contract. He can make all NBA, and it wouldn't cost them anything extra. Jabari Smith Jr., third overall pick in that draft class, has also been paid. We talked about his contract as a potential comp for Christian Braun in on an earlier show in this podcast, because I think he's making right around 20% of the salary cap. Might be closer to 19. Oh no, I'm looking at it right now. It's way less. 20 million is more like the actual number. He's probably making right around an average of 12.5% of the cap over the 5 years of this extension, which is like a really good number. I feel like we've been talking about Christian Braun as a potential 18 to 20% of the cap guy. That would be like, oh, I wouldn't love that percentage. I love a 12.5% of the cap. That's awesome.
It's a lot better.
So those guys have all been paid. I actually think in terms of player archetypes, Dyson Daniels, Keegan Murray, and Tari Eason, also members of the 2022 draft class, are better comps for Peyton and Christian sort of roles, right? You've got these tenacious, at least in terms of their ideal form, tenacious defensive wings that may or may not be a two-way player. And we can argue about that when it comes to like a Dyson Daniels and Tari Eason type. Keegan is more like, doesn't do any one thing at a super high level, but is like a do-it-all kind of wing, right? Maybe more similar to Christian Braun. So I think Keegan is probably the best comp of the three for Christian Braun. He's been starting in his career since his rookie year. So he's been a starter for 3 years. Christian has only been starting for 1, but the two of them fulfill that similar role as this like fifth starter that does a little bit of everything, whatever's, needed from them based on whoever else is in the lineup, right? And I think in terms of impact, despite the difference in the amount of time that they've both been starters, their impact has actually converged. And I wouldn't even fault you for thinking that Christian is better than Keegan at this point, although I think Keegan is more versatile. I think Christian does a couple things at a higher level than any one thing that Keegan does. So that's just they're arguably in the same tier. Keegan had a bigger role before last season when they got DeRozan, right? The Kings basically said, hey, can you turn into just our two-way defensive wing starting your second year? And then they went full speed ahead into I don't want to say pigeonhole, but let's very much refine and restrict. Let's restrict Keegan's role a bit so that he can just do that thing. And I don't think that was intentional on the Kings' part either. They were like, let's just build a team with DeMar DeRozan for some reason, and De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, and it's gonna be weird. And then make it weirder by adding Zach LaVine. Sure, whatever, right? But what do you think about that comp before we move on to one of the other ones in terms of both these guys haven't been paid, obviously, right? We're waiting on Christian Braun's extension. We're waiting on Keegan Murray's. But what do you think about Keegan as a potential comp for Christian, and how far apart would you expect their contract extensions to be?
I just like the Kings have so much more room to give Keegan an extension. Like he's
Do
a
they?
more yeah, I just think with his outlook, their team outlook, they don't have pressure to be contending for titles. I think Keegan is a young, kind of promising, exciting player that has shown more on offense than CB or Pwat, I think,
Right.
unfortunately.
Keegan
And
almost broke Klay Thompson's single game record for made threes in that one game against the Jazz. He had a 50, that was a 50-point game, I believe. His second year. Christian has obviously never done something like that.
mhm.
This was
And
back when he had a bigger role in the offense before they got to Rosen, obviously.
right, and CB's like, yes, he's been starting less. Now he's in the starting role, but he's on a contending team. He plays a specific role for us in terms of being a defensive minded player where we have a lot of offensive first players, but he's going to have to be able to shoot. And that's still a question for sure. It's not deterring me so much as it would other people. I get it's a worry that you don't believe in his shot at all. I'm just like, we have to keep CB at this point. And for if you're in a position where like with Pwat and CB, where you want them to keep developing, they're not in their ideal form yet, as you've said. And I think CB's closer to where he needs to be than Pwat, obviously, because he's been contributing so much more.
Yeah.
I'm more willing to just kind of see where things settle with CB and take a risk than I am on Pwat, even if Pwat's getting a much lower extension by comparison. But
yeah, but specifically Christian and Keegan, like who would you expect to get paid more ultimately? So you're saying Keegan because the Kings have
yeah.
a less pressure on
Yeah, and I
spending
think
and
the
whatever?
Nuggets have to try to like penny pinch a little bit with CB.
I do think that that's a double-edged sword with the like which team has more sort of margin for error or whatever with like the amount that they could pay this guy. The Kings are not expected to be competitive, but that's also a reason that they would not want to be in the luxury tax. Like they have no reason to spend even that much money. Whereas the Nuggets are like, well, we're supposed to be a
Mm,
competitive team. We're going to spend well into the luxury tax to
yeah,
keep like a competitive team going. Um, and they've got a lot of, well, eventually expiring, but as of right now, not great contracts on the books when you're talking about Zach LaVine with another, I believe, 2 years left in his deal. He's not expiring yet. So yeah, 2 more seasons, including a player option. Um, DeMar DeRozan isn't on a max contract, but Domantas Sabonis is on like a near max, right? It would be like something akin to a rookie max if you took that kind of money. There's all these guys also that are below the veteran max, but they are veteran players, but they make more than the rookie scale max extension that you could consider in that max range, right? So Zach LaVine and Sabonis would both be those guys, and LaVine's making an actual veteran maximum contract right now. They're paying a lot of guys in the double figures in terms of well over $10 million, whereas the Nuggets don't have as many guys that make that just because a lot of our money's more concentrated at the top. Uh, so it's difficult actually to see where a lot of the money for Keegan would come from if they're a team that's trying to stay out of the tax. Just from that particular
yeah, because you
perspective.
really don't want to be there if you don't have a reason for it. So I get that.
Now, I don't think that they would necessarily shortchange Keegan to stay out of the tax. I think they'd probably just trade these other players. So to your point, they're like, well, we're not like we're trying to be like competitive-ish, but we don't have pressure to like keep Zach LaVine or
mhm.
keep DeMar DeRozan more likely because I don't think that it'd be easy to trade Zach LaVine's contract just because it's so big. Um,
God, it is a really good comparison. I mean,
yeah.
I think of Keegan as a better 3-point shooter for some reason, but they're really not so different, are they? When you look at it.
Yeah, I think, and they both struggle with hesitating on those shots, right? I think I've talked on the show about this one scene from last season where Keegan, I think it was a game against the Lakers, if I believe. Yes, it was, might have been overtime against the Lakers. and Keegan runs a handoff with, I believe it was Domas, and he hesitates on the shot. It's wide open, doesn't take the shot, tries to drive it, ends up like passing to somebody else, whatever. And Mike Brown calls Sasha Vezenkov off the bench and tells him to get ready to check into the game, almost like threatening Keegan to be subbed out of the game in that way. And on the very next possession, Keegan takes and makes the same shot. And then Mike Brown sends Sasha back to the bench. And that was something that Mike Brown was always trying to instill in him, is that consistent aggressiveness, or aggression, I should say, when it comes to hunting his own shot. He's got talent in that regard. And I saw it. I saw it when he played in the NBA. I saw it when he played in Summer League. But both of these guys struggle with consistent aggression. It's kind of what makes them good fifth starters. They kind of stay out of the way. But when you've got a team like the Kings have, where everybody else is super high usage on ball dudes, and you're not the aggressive guy, you're not going to get the touches. And so Keegan did have a down year. Let's talk a little bit about Dyson Daniels, who you might say is an even better comp for Christian Braun, because they both went from being bench guys to starters in their third year and had really steep increases in terms of their overall impact, and showed that they were able to handle a starting role, at least in terms of the volume. Like, they had no problem playing the minutes. They did the thing, whatever. Obviously, Dyson took a more defensive-minded approach to, his, new role as a starter, right? Led the league in steals by a wide margin. Got a lot of Defensive Player of the Year votes. I thought that was a bit of a joke. I think it's kind of crazy that he came in second just because of all the steals. And the steals are hard to do, but I don't think that he had the same level of defensive impact as some of the other guys in the running. But I'm just kind of glad that he didn't win, because I thought that would have been really bad. Well, if you could bring up the Christian Braun DARKO comparison here. I've actually got the DARKO DPM chart, which is like one of these more trusted all-in-one metrics. And these are all guys, again, who were drafted in the 2022 draft. And so you've got the season by season comparison for these guys. And you see Christian Braun and Dyson Daniels are on similar trajectories as of right now. And Keegan Murray was actually closer to, where, kind of impressive how high Dyson Daniels was, despite being just a bench player in New Orleans for those first 2 years. And then he just skyrocketed once he was given the starting role. But Keegan sort of stagnated over this last year as his role diminished, let's say. Will, do you note, is there anything about this chart that stands out to you about trying to compare these three guys and who you think should be paid more or less? I expect all these guys to get at least 4-year deals, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if at least one of them got a 5-year deal with whatever team extended.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they got 5-year deals. Dyson Daniels, his stock is super high. I mean, you just saw with those defensive.
He's a darling of NBA Twitter too.
Yeah, he really is. But that's what's more shocking to me. I thought there'd be a little more definitive data to show Dyson Daniels is more valuable than Christian Braun by perception. But based on the DARKO and based on just looking at their percentiles and how they grade out, even on B-ball index or something like that, CB is right there with Dyson Daniels, and better in some instances. He seems like a better rebounder, seems like better interior defender, and
he's a better finisher for
CB's
sure.
Definitely better at the rim. He's going to have the edge over a lot of players that you're comparing him to at his level.
It's so crazy how much you can boost your impact just by making your damn layups, guys.
And playing
if there
with
was
Jokic.
One skill, I could say Peyton Watson. If you get better at literally nothing else, just make your layups. That would be incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately, double your potential contract value that way.
Yeah, CB has really good defensive versatility, and they're all pretty similar on the 3-point shot. Dyson Daniels is not great.
Right, but he's probably the best on-ball guy of the three. Even maybe not because he doesn't really shoot, but he's got the most. I think he's got the most reliable floater of these guys. And like Keegan all three of them like don't look at the rim when they have the ball. This
Yeah,
is
that's
like
so true.
the thing with all three of these guys, and why I think they're good like comps with each other, and why I'm sort of wondering like, are the Kings, Nuggets, and Hawks just sort of in a standoff right now, waiting to see what somebody
Who's
else
gonna
pays
set the
the other
market?
guy so that they can, so they
Yeah,
can,
Dyson's
set the
mid-range
market
game
that way.
is more reliable than CB for sure. If it's a floater or a jumper, and I don't think CB takes many jumpers for the mid-range. Obviously, that would be strange because he's dunking it or shooting threes. But yeah, I'm encouraged by this actually, by this discussion. Like I said, I don't have like
Because
a
you
number.
have some level of respect for both Dyson and Keegan that you're like,
Yeah,
Christian,
but they
potentially
both
better
have
than those
they
guys, but at least
all
it's good, it
have
seems.
yeah, they all have some weaknesses, and it's
Yeah.
has to do with shooting. Um, but their defense is amazing, and I love watching CB. He's explosive, he's exciting, he's a cutter, he plays well with Jokic, he can push the pace if you want to, and he offers ability to defend wings. And I like CB. I'm just like kind of less stressed about the CB number. I don't really care what it's going to be. Obviously, it's not going to be a max that's 30%. We're not talking about that. We're talking more 18 down to 12 range. And I just want to see where it lands. But I'm not going to be too concerned about it or fret over it or think it's going to handicap the Nuggets severely in any way. Like, I'm really not that worried about CB.
News comes out tomorrow that the Kings are giving Keegan Murray 4 years, $120 million. What's your reaction? That's 30 mil.
I that's like what people have been preparing people for, and 30 mil is not going to
No,
look
I'm
as
not
much
prepared.
later.
I'm not prepared. I'm fighting back. I'm rebelling. My preparation is, batting down the hatchets, the hatches, not
Hatches.
hatchets. I should also batten down the hatchets. Well, Herb is a veteran. That's a veteran extension, so that's not the same as a rookie scale player. The difference between a veteran extension, even though I think Herb Jones could be like a good comp, or not a comp, but an anchor for like, I probably think that like Herb Jones is probably a better player than Christian Braun. He's like a closer to defensive player of the year caliber player, like an actual one, not like Dyson Daniels. Um, Good starter, can shoot, stays out of the way, good cutter, good transition player, all of these things, right? So you're probably thinking, well, Christian should probably make less than him. The difference with a rookie scale contract extension is you're paying also for upside. And while Herb Jones is a little bit older, quite a bit older actually, and probably has pretty close to like his final form, there's still a little bit of like, well, these players could get even better than they are with more time, reps, especially in the case of both Dyson and Christian, who haven't been starters for that long. You can kind of talk yourself into, we haven't seen the best of this guy yet. And that's the argument that their agents are making in these negotiations. And so, plus the fact that the cap is going to be going up and all of that stuff. So you would
But would
probably be paying more if that was the argument you were making, which is why it's better to comp them to each other than it is to comp them to veteran guys. Even though we've talked in this show, like another one that we like for Christian is Josh Hart in terms of percentage of the cap, right? So if you were talking about Herb Jones on his what is it, 66, 3 years for 66 million. Let me just give you like a quick, this is the percentage of the cap for that, and compare it to what we know about Josh Hart. Yeah, Herb Jones is going to be making, that's like 12.5% of the cap. So similar to Jabari Smith Jr., right? So that's a number I would be happy with too. But you have to make the argument to Christian for that, right? Because he could obviously like wait, maybe he's be like, I'm going to have an even better year, and then you're going to want to pay me $30 million a year, and then that's not fun, right? Especially if he's not going to play defense all year again. But The other way that you could get that kind of deal done is say, we're going to give you a longer extension than we would give an older player because you're young. We expect you to be relatively healthy. We don't expect you to break down and, be washed by the end of this deal, whatever. So we're gonna commit to you, give you a longer deal, and you're gonna take slightly less off the annual value because we're willing to commit X amount of money to you, right? Which is the other benefit to thinking about these rookie scale extensions.
But do you like 22 a year? I know it's more percent of the cap, but 22 a year.
The number is, that's fine. That's fine with me. I think when we talked about it at the beginning of the summer, it was like, I don't love 25, but if it happened, like, you live with it. Anything about like 23 is like my sweet spot number where like in terms of annual value, 23 million a year is where I'd be like, I'm happy with this. Anything under that, I'm like, oh, we're extracting value now. Anything above that, up to 25, I'm like, okay, we lost a little bit here, but like, it's reasonable. Like, I could see why it would happen. Especially, we were talking about these numbers before the MPJ trade. Denver created a little bit more flexibility for themselves next season with respect to trying to stay under the second apron and all that stuff. So they have a little bit more room to play with, but I wouldn't want to like blow all of that just like necessarily giving all of it to Christian Braun, right? But it does take some pressure off of what that annual number could be.
Yeah. Well, look, and then the last thing I'll say on CB is I'm a huge CB fan. I guess we haven't really talked about Tari Eason. But just for CB in this extension, like, I'm a huge CB fan. Love watching him play. So it could make me biased that I don't care about the number as much, and I just like trust Ben Wallace based on what they've shown that they're going to know what's best for the team and CB.
No, I don't trust Ben Wallace. They haven't done a contract extension yet. I don't know how they pay guys.
Hey, they didn't.
I've seen them make a trade.
They haven't done any. They hadn't done an NBA offseason before, and then they just crushed it.
Well, it's not over yet because they still have to do these extensions.
Yeah. I think that will affect those, like, consequences will come down into other seasons. They really screw this up. But for this season, we're locked into what these guys are going to do. So I'm excited for that. But I just trust them. I think CB is going to be really good. But I do get that if players don't start respecting his shot on the court, something's going to have to be done about that, because I don't want people to be helping off CB so easily and locking down any driving lanes or other playmaking opportunities for Cam and Jamal or whoever it is. So it's definitely a concern. I'm not saying his shot's there and I'm 100% like confident in it, and you guys should be too. Like, we're going to see how it plays out. But everything else that he brings, I really like.
Yeah. So let's talk about Peyton Watson, because we are scraping up against 2 hours here. We're probably going to have to scrap our media rights discussion and save that for another show. But let's talk about Peyton Watson's potential contract extension and comps, right? I, as you alluded to here, looked up some stuff about Tari Eason because I think that he might be the most interesting comp here. The reason that it's interesting to me that so many 2022 draftees haven't yet signed their extensions is because I thought by now I would have some idea of what the number was going to be for both Christian and Peyton based on these other guys in their draft class and what they were getting paid. Tari Eason is one in particular that has surprised me that it hasn't happened. Not because it's not necessarily uncommon for these types of extensions to happen toward the end of the offseason. And I'm talking about like the day before the first game of the season, as was the case for Zeke when he got his extension. But the Rockets have already extended somebody from that same draft class, as we talked about, in Jabari Smith Jr. So the fact that they haven't extended Tari Eason yet is interesting to me, because I just sort of expected them to like, oh, okay, this is just how this organization is doing their business. Does this indicate that they might not pay Tari Eason this summer? Does it indicate that they want to wait and take him to restricted free agency, that would surprise me a bit because I feel like Tari is probably just going to make a lot less money than any of us think just because of the health stuff. He hasn't been able to stay on the floor for a large chunk of his first 3 seasons in the NBA. And I think that is not good for him, obviously, and it's not good for the organization, but it gives the organization a leverage point in contract negotiations because it gives Tari an incentive to try to lock in any kind of guaranteed money that he can, just in case health stuff happens down the line that could reduce, his potential value. But whoa, Vyacheslav, you are way off on that. Way, 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 way off on that. I don't know what Ime's relationship is to Tari Eason. But to my knowledge and like my observation, when Tari has been healthy, he's played. It's not like Ime is benching him when he's healthy. And I feel like when he's played, he's been spectacular. He defends at a super elite level, and he's shown that he's basically what Golden State wishes they had out of Jonathan Kuminga. Like, no question, right? He's a defensive wing, great defensive wing, who is worse than Kuminga on offense for sure, in terms of like having a bag and for overall versatility. But again, he defends, he does all the little things, including rebounding. He has great feel for the game. He's a good connective passer as well, right? But if Tari Eason ends up taking something around like mid-level exception money, as Ryan Blackburn of Mile High Sports and Locked On Nuggets has indicated would be a reasonable deal for Peyton Watson to accept, 4 years, $60 million. I wouldn't love that for Denver. I'm sure. I don't know how Peyton would feel about that, but I feel like he should be pretty ecstatic about it. And I feel like if Tari takes that money, then Peyton is kind of in a corner because he's definitively a worse player than Tari Eason on both ends of the floor. I completely disagree with Vyacheslav. I think, well, depending on how you grade out Peyton as a defender, maybe you don't feel that great about him, so it's like whatever. If you could bring up the Peyton starter comp is I think what I named this one, the Peyton starter DARKO here. All right. So I left Tari Eason off of this graphic. This is the DARKO DPM chart for Christian Braun, Peyton Watson, who's in red. And you saw that he and Christian were on pretty similar trajectories their first 2 years up until that last chunk of the 23-24 season, which is right around the time that Calvin Booth himself even referenced that Peyton Watson was sort of inconsistent in the way that he ended the season, and he needed to be more consistent in his preparation and all this stuff, and obviously has a relatively down year, with the exception of a few highs in the middle of the season, this past season with Peyton Watson, but still nowhere near the impact of guys like Christian Braun and Dyson Daniels, who were obviously starting for their new teams, right? The reason I left Tari Eason off of this graphic is because he was well above all of these guys in terms of DARKO DPM impact when he's on the floor, which is insane because he's coming off the bench, and I believe he has since his second year, because I think he might have been starting when the Rockets were all rookies, when they were like a nasty team. But yeah, he's like well off the charts for all these things in terms of impact. He's got an insane steal rate. And he, like I said, he's a two-way player. Like, you don't worry about Tari being able to make layups, for example, right? And that's enough to boost your offensive impact metrics by a lot, just because a lot of rookies and like young players do struggle with that particular thing. So if you can do it, it raises you like a cut above the rest, which I think is a big reason why Christian's impact numbers are what they are right now. Will, when you hear everything I'm saying about Tari Eason and you look at like where Peyton stands relative to that, the impact metrics of these other guys that have been given starter opportunity, do you lean more towards Peyton could be that if he were or had been given more opportunity, and so he probably should be paid closer to what you would pay these other guys? Or, and again, I comped him to Tari, and I should have just included the Tari bar on there so you could see. But he's a guy who's been coming off the bench and is still able to make substantially greater positive impact, and is probably going to get paid less than Christian and Dyson because of the health things, right? And the fact that he's seen, at least in his current system, as a bench player, probably in large part because of the health stuff, like just not being able to stay on the floor consistently. But do you lean more towards Peyton would be able to do more and like be on that same trajectory as Christian? Like we saw, like they started to diverge when Christian was given more opportunity? Or do you think, look, this guy still has potential to like be better in the future, and you should account for that when you're thinking about his extension, but for now, he's definitely a tier below these other guys that we're talking about?
I still think he's a tier below for sure. I'm not of the opinion that if Pwat was given more opportunity, he'd be in that Dyson McDaniels CB category, because we've been desperate for contributors and for depth before we could even get a lot of the guys we got this offseason, and Pwat has never been able to really put a consistent product on the floor to stay on the floor. I don't think it was Malone's fault for not playing him enough. I don't think it was David Adelman's fault for not playing him enough in the playoffs, or for Malone not playing him in the playoffs before that. I think that if he was better, he would have been able to play more and would have earned more minutes. And I just seriously doubt his ability to keep developing. You can end up being higher or lower on him if you want, because you can see some potential. His defense is there, and so you just want to add some more offensive attributes to his game, because then you have an amazing two-way player, and that's who we're desperate to have. But basically right now, he is a very, very good perimeter defensive player, and is a good, I don't know what the word, rim protector. Like his block rate's insane. So he has those two elements. Not a great rebounder. He can pick up fouls when he drives, but his free throw is not good, and his 3-point is not good, and his rim finishing is not good. So I'm pretty low on
really
PUR
like
right now.
We've talked about it even throughout the season. We were like, he's shown flashes of being able to do all of these things and hasn't been consistent in any of them.
Yeah.
Including and especially the stuff on the defensive side of the ball. Because like a first or second year Dyson Daniels coming off the bench for the Pelicans, he was not a good offensive player. They'd have him initiating offense sometimes, but dude didn't look at the basket, and he was basically guarded like slow-mo, right? It's not, so he was not an offensive positive in that system, but he was such a good defender that they played him enough, right? Like nobody was complaining. There were times that Dyson would get like DNPs, but when he played, he usually played a lot. And when he didn't play, it was mostly because they had a bunch of other wings, defensive wings. Peyton's the only defensive wing that we have, like coming off the bench, that is like a high level defensive wing, at least in theory. So the fact that he hasn't been able to carve out a bigger role for himself, like I just don't think there's an excuse for that, right? It's really been about the consistency defensively more than anything. And obviously it would help if the offense weren't quite as rough as it is. Like he wouldn't have to be a 8 to 9 to 10 out of 10 defensive player every second on the floor if he were a slightly better offensive player. But it's like, okay, until you get there with your offense, the defense has to be at that level in order to stay on the floor for a competitive team. That's just like how it is in the NBA, right? We've talked a lot about Peyton Watson and his inconsistencies and what he's lacking in this summer. We've also talked about like his potential, and it's up the wazoo, because otherwise they would have traded him already if he didn't have the kind of potential that he had. They would have traded him already and just like gotten a couple of second round picks back. in my opinion. And who knows, that could end up happening down the line. But the reason is he's shown these flashes. The reason that we keep him and everyone's talking about, like, well, what would he be extended? Because if he hadn't shown these flashes, a player with this level of impact is not talked about as a guy that's going to get extended before restricted free agency. That's just not how it goes. In terms of overall impact, it just hasn't been there on any kind of consistent basis for him. But again, the flashes have been there, and so my question is, how much better do you think he's going to be this season? And is it worth it to try to lock him down now just because you think he's going to be better this season than he's been? Or, especially in light of the potential that the Houston Rockets, and I'm not saying they're going to do this, but they haven't extended him yet. But if they take Tari Eason to restricted free agency, again, there are other reasons to not take a player to restricted free agency. It's not a great locker room vibe. It's a very messy situation, as we've discussed very briefly in the case of Jonathan Kuminga, Josh Giddey, Cam Thomas, and Quentin Grimes. Especially for a team that's has title aspirations, right? But does it make sense? Like, Houston's also a team with title aspirations, right? What if they end up trading Tari Eason this summer? Then you
I don't know.
I have a lot of questions about this comp in particular, because I am surprised, given that they've paid Jabari, that Tari has not been extended yet.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good comp. I even looked at, I mean, these players have some big differences in ages and experience, but like even Isaac Okoro or like Haywood Highsmith.
Yeah. They don't have the draft. The difference between them and Peyton is draft pedigree.
Yeah.
Like, they are better players.
But if you,
I mean, actually, Okoro is a first-round pick. Highsmith is the one that doesn't have the draft pedigree.
But if you like don't look at age, or you don't look at draft pedigree or whatever, and you just like look at what they're producing, which I think is similar to what Pwat is, like maybe a give or take, obviously, because some of them are way better at some things and worse at other things. But Okoro's in the $11 million a year range. Highsmith's like $5.5 million a year range. And I don't know where those are going, and I don't know where Eason's contract's going. But for trying to find like similar comparisons to Pwat and theorize what could we be, I do see like that 11 as like the higher end, and the 5 million is obviously the much lower end. I don't know where we're going to end up, but I would love to have a more definitive comparable contract with any of those guys. And if they do go to unrestricted free agency with like Tari Eason, I would feel more comfortable. Yeah, to restricted free agency. I would feel more comfortable going to restricted free agency with Pwat. As shitty as a thing as that is, it can kind of make sense. But like, then not that he's going to be.
And that's how they got Okoro on that number, is they took him to restricted free agency. That's how the Cavs got him on that number before they traded him to Chicago. And again, that's what happens, is you take a guy to restricted free agency because you're okay with him not necessarily walking for nothing, because obviously they can't, they're restricted. But you're okay with them hating you forever and then having to trade them, which I'm not saying happened with Okoro. I think they had other reasons to do that trade. But it's not like there was any love lost, it seems, between Okoro and the Cavs organization after that.
Yeah.
After he, again, started over 50 games for them the season before they like took him to restricted free agency. In that season where they had a lot of injuries between Mobley, Garland, and then Mitchell and Allen for different parts of that season, right?
Yeah. It's just another scenario where I think about Zeke, where you give out a contract because of what you think he's going to be. And I don't want to be in that situation with Pwat. Not that it'll be as bad as that, because we're not going to be giving him all these player options and those things. And we've learned that lesson, but still, like, you got to think about it. And I'm kind of tired of giving out contracts to players when they haven't proved it yet. And even though we have questions about CB, I feel better about taking that risk than I do with Pwat, where I don't have really any reason to think he would improve this season or play significantly better. personally.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think that because of both the situation for the team and the situation for Peyton, it would probably be best to go with a shorter term deal. I would actually be okay with Denver getting Peyton signed on a deal that is similar to Isaac Okoro's, but not having to take him to restricted free agency to do it.
Yeah.
Um, Okoro has shown more, frankly, in terms of being a consistent NBA player than Peyton has. The difference is just, frankly, opportunity, especially after Okoro was removed from the starting lineup. I think Peyton just plays more than him, even though they're both coming off the bench. I need to double check the actual numbers on that, but I also don't
He
because I know
definitely
how
plays
many guys the
more.
Cavs play. So 3-year deal. So basically 3 years, 33 million, I think is around what Okoro got. I'd be
And
okay
yeah.
with that for Peyton. And here's the thing is that removes the longer term upside for Denver because if Peyton actualizes the kind of player that he can be, if these flashes turn into any kind of consistency, he's worth way more than that as a player. So you'd probably want him locked up for longer. What I would do personally, the way I would structure this is probably go with, especially because we have a little bit more flexibility due to the trading MPJ and having a little bit more room under the second apron in subsequent years. What I would do is probably something closer to 3 years, 45 million or 3 years, like 48 million and make the last year a team option. And frankly, I think Peyton should want like that would be my starting point. You probably end up with like the way that the two sides converge is probably a 3-year deal with no team option, but that's where I would start. Um if Denver wants to trade him at some point, probably to a team that values him enough that they're going to pay him on his subsequent contract, he should probably want that. And a team option being there makes it easier for Denver to do that. So he should not want a team option there because I obviously Denver or the team that trades for him could obviously decline that. Denver should want the team option, but there is an incentive there for Peyton to be on a more tradable deal. Plus, if Peyton does actualize his potential as a player, a 3-year deal is better for him than a 4-year deal because he can enter unrestricted free agency sooner in the future and make more money based on whatever kind of player he becomes, right? And Denver or somebody else could pay him even more. But that I would go with a 3-year deal, and ideally that third year's a team option, and I would look at something like what 16 is high. The point of going a little bit higher on the annual value is to get Peyton to take a deal with a team option, right?
Yeah, like
It's like a little
incentivize it.
incentive, exactly. And
Then you can
maybe
get out of
you
there
don't go.
traded.
Maybe you don't go 16 million a year. Maybe you go with the 3 years 45, but you front load it so that the first year is worth more and then it's descending from there and there's a team option. Like that's what I would do. That's the kind of deal that they should have given to Zeke if they were going to give him a deal at all, which I argued that they shouldn't have. But if they were going to, that's the kind of deal it should have been. There's no point in having a 4-year descending contract with a player option on the last year. Anyway, that's my. I will try to talk about less about Zeke's contract, but it's difficult when there are 3 years left on it.
It is funny too to try to get Pwat on a number that's less than Zeke, and he's like, obviously I'm better than Zeke. I'm actually playing and I'm on the same team, but such different circumstances. Yeah, 16 is super high. Nuggets fans are freaking out even about the prospect of paying him 12 million a year, maybe more acceptable in the $11 million range. But I could see, front loading it and then have it some kind of descending on a shorter deal. I mean,
I think if you go over 14 million a year, that you're doing that in order to get them to accept a team option. And then you make the argument to the agent like, look, this will make it easier to trade and we will try to get you to a team that would be willing to pay you if we end up going that route.
Yeah. I mean, Pwat's probably going to have to sacrifice something along the lines Like I don't think he's going to get exactly what he wants or would hope for, unfortunately, and hopefully he'll
Well, what
understand
Denver is paying
why.
for, in my opinion, right now is just peace of mind. I don't think that Peyton is gonna have a crazy market
Right,
in restricted free agency next summer,
right.
right? Because he is still gonna be coming off the bench. We have a set starting lineup. It's not like there's gonna be a competition that he could win to get starting level minutes or whatever. If there are injuries, he definitely will play, but he's gonna be competing with Bruce Brown to fill minutes when there's an injury. He's gonna be competing with Jonas Valanciunas to fill minutes when there's an injury. Competing with Tim Hardaway. There's a lot more competition at that wing, on that wing position, and so it's like I'm not worried about him massively outperforming expectations next year, even if he does improve as a player.
Yeah, it would be
So,
hard for me to imagine him outperforming it, to be honest. But
yeah,
yeah, I don't. It's sad because I remember him guarding Wemby, and I was amazed with
and
what he
Chet.
did, and
Yep.
Chet, and like he has positional versatility on the defensive end. He has moments on offense where he hits like a big three or like a couple threes in a row, but you can't necessarily let that cloud your perception of him when overall the product's not there night to night. And I start to think about what the
Possession to
options,
possession.
possession to possession, and I just start to think about the roads that lead to Peyton either like going to another team or what that looks like. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that outcome, but I don't know.
But
We'll just see if
you
they
gotta
make a
do it the
decision
right
sooner
way.
than
Like,
later.
don't let it get too
Yeah.
ugly. Don't give him a 4-year deal. I would be opposed to that because he has not shown enough for Denver to make that kind of long-term commitment. That's why I think a 2+1 with a team option on that last year makes the most sense for Denver. It doesn't make sense for Peyton,
Yeah. I was like, would
but
he just deny
that's
that
why
route,
you
right?
would that's why you would increase the annual value. Right, and I think Jake Coyne would probably agree with me because he went really extreme on the years versus annual value argument because he thinks, like, we should do, like, 3 years 90 or 3 years 100 for a Christian Brown, and I'm like, "Whoa," 'cause
Yeah.
I would rather, like, he that there like, I think it depends on the type of player, and there are certain types of players you wanna commit to longer term, and try to get a lower
Yeah.
number. And then probably that's like a fine rule of thumb, and then you exclude some section of players that you would want to commit to. But that's what I'd be
Yeah.
looking at for Peyton.
The anxiety of longer contracts is real, and I get wanting to like find the right balance between paying more
Yeah.
for it and not having to worry too much about it being so long. Or there's so many players with their contracts, the years just start looking very daunting when you look down the line, and you don't want to be in that situation. But yeah, it's very interesting idea and move that we could do. I just wonder what we'd have to do to get Peyton wanting to sign it, but he's kind of in more of a desperate spot than maybe some might think, but who knows how he negotiates, and he's obviously going to believe in himself as a player and all that. So you don't know how those negotiations go all the time. So
Who's his agent's Jeff Schwartz too. Or he's with Excel. I don't know who his main agent is within that, but he's got the same agent as um Jokic. Would he be in the second apron for sure? Basically, I'm saying you would want to stay under the second apron. But if Christian's contract is that much lower than I thought it was gonna be 2 months ago, then you have a little bit more flexibility. The exact numbers, like, don't matter to me as much than, like, staying, like, within those ranges.
yeah, I don't think
I
they would
think
let
between
the Nuggets
Go
get
ahead.
there. They just said it was like a hard
Yeah.
cap, so they won't let us get to the second
Well, no,
apron with
they didn't
those.
say it was a hard cap, Will. They said that they were not scared of the second apron, but they were nervous about what it could do to them, right? You
Yes,
have to be
yes.
very, very careful in the language that you use. Um I can actually just double check here. Second apron. I think the Nuggets have it's like 45 million is what they could pay between Christian. The thing is if they got off of Zeke's money, that opens up a ton more flexibility in this conversation, but I
Oh
don't
yeah,
see how that happens.
stretch provision.
No, we're not
It's
doing
all the
that.
rage right now.
Ugh, maybe we should do that. How long can you stretch a contract out for potentially?
I don't actually know the length that you can stretch it, or if there's like a limit or how that gets settled for how much per year you stretch it. But I just felt like teams wouldn't touch a stretch provision with a 10-foot pole, and now everyone's doing it. It doesn't matter the cost.
Yeah.
But they're a little
Looking
more
at the
desperate, and they
numbers.
needed to do that to bring people in and to get people out. And obviously, I don't think we're in that situation. So
Honestly, if they here's the thing, I'm looking at the numbers right now. If they want to pay Peyton, they have to trade Zeke. Because right now, as of right now, they're only 22 million projected under the second apron next year, and that's like all going to go to Christian. Now, you could say, let's take Jonas's money off the books, but even then, that's probably not enough to pay Peyton like a number that it'll take unless you take him to restricted free agency and just kind of force his hand. Without trading Zeke.
that's interesting.
It's not a great contract. Not a great contract, folks. All right. We've talked enough about Peyton and Christian's contracts for now. We'll talk more about them probably even before anything is actually signed, because it is a very interesting and dramatic question with these rookie scale extensions. Let's get to our cherry picking segment. So we're going to save our discussion on the NBA media rights deal for, you know what? We'll talk about it when we get the NBA schedule out, which I believe could be coming within the next couple of weeks, just based on the fact that it's always around mid-August. Because the different media rights partners are getting different special days on the calendar, and we can talk about some of the specifics of that deal when we get the NBA schedule. But for now, let's talk about our cherry picking segment here. So we haven't done this segment in a while, right? We used to pick an interesting stat or chart that we saw and kind of talk about what it means for the game overall or a particular player, whatever it is that stood out as interesting. And we like it because we like cherry picking stats for our agendas. And this one was a great one. Will, if you could bring up the Jonas floater image. It's funny because I named this the Jonas floater, but the first thing that your eye will be drawn to on this image is probably Nikola Jokic at the very top of this graph. It seems like he's trying to escape the mob here. This is a chart of leaders in career paint non-restricted area field goal attempts and their efficiency on those shots. That's basically floater range. And Jokic is way up at the top as the y-axis is efficiency. X-axis is field goal attempts. We've got Tim Duncan, Shaq, and is that Pau Gasol here leading the pack in field goal attempts. Jokic not that far behind, but obviously much earlier in his career than the total length of the careers of those other guys. So he hasn't taken as many, but he is super, super duper efficient on these shots. My eye was secondarily drawn to one Jonas Valanciunas, who is the second most efficient player on this chart. If you just trace down the y-axis of all of the guys here, you zoom in, he's right next to Kawhi Leonard, more efficient than Kawhi Leonard from that floater hook shot range. And I thought to myself, is this why the Denver Nuggets have apparently been chasing after, or what was the word that Ben Tenzer used? Coveting Jonas Valanciunas for a while now, is because he could, if he can't replicate any other aspect of Nikola Jokic's game, he could replicate his floater touch, which is very impressive. Well, how do you feel about Jonas Valanciunas' floater?
I didn't necessarily have some awareness of his fantastic floater and how it would rank in history with these legends, but I had said like Jokic, I knew Jonas.
Yeah. Okay.
But Jonas, I've said before, we're not getting him for defense. We're getting him for offense. He's
You're
going to come
definitely
in.
not getting him for defense.
Yeah, so does not surprise me that he has aspects to his game that can be measured out highly like this, and he has great putback rates. I did not see stats on his floaters though, and I like to see it. I do remember a couple times where he like hit some. It was almost like the little turnaround hook shot floaters over Jokic himself.
Oh yeah,
So
he cooks
he
Jokic. We always talk about how Jokic has his biggest games against Jonas, and in particular when Jonas was a Pelican. Like we know that those were Jokic's highest game scores and some of the highest game scores in NBA history. But also when Jonas was a Wizard, he had pretty big games against him when Jonas was a Wizard, including like this last season when he had was it 56 points against the Wizards in that first matchup this season
yeah,
in one
something
of those
crazy. Yeah.
losses. Not great.
Hmm.
But yeah, Jonas has huge games against Jokic too. They're just not as big. They would be huge games, like monster games for any other center in the NBA. But because Jokic cooked him even harder and is the center of the offense and probably gets more touches and all that stuff. Jonas isn't dropping 40 on him, but if he got Jokic's touches, he might be able to. Mostly because like Jokic is like, oh yeah, sure, dude, you can shoot. I don't care.
Definitely. Yeah, he would love for someone to get him some more assists. But yeah, no, I'm very excited to see how Val works. And that's what's sometimes frustrating about the identity of the bench is that we've always tried to go for like a defensive identity, and then they just don't end up scoring. And that can largely contribute to why those minutes are so disastrous and in the negatives. And scoring will help your defense get better. And so if sometimes you just have a big guy, can cook maybe backup center on the opposing team, get you some points. He might get cooked on the other end, and he will get cooked on the other end by someone inevitably. But he has a lot to offer in some offensive areas. It's not like he's amazing stretch big or anything. He's like a very prototypical center who screens and rebounds and has little pushing floaters and hook shots. Yeah, that's where he's going to be, and I think he's going to do it pretty consistently. Like, I'm not worried about that. I don't think he's going to like disappear like some of our other backup centers we've seen in recent years. In that
I don't know.
regard,
I'd rather them disappear than make very loud mistakes as some of our other backup centers
yeah.
were fond of doing, or maybe not so fond. It's not fun. It's not fun to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like he
-10
is
in 3 minutes.
91st percentile in finishing talent, so that's still pretty good.
Yeah. No,
But
awesome.
he's a big guy. You'd think he'd be able to do that, but
You
you might be
mentioned
wrong watching backup centers.
you mentioned we didn't get Val for defense, and I agree. We obviously did not get Val for defense at all. I actually think we're probably going to have to cover for him more defensively in these bench lineups. So I wanted you to kind of throw out your ideal non-Jokic bench that balances offense and defense with Valanciunas on the floor.
It's
And it
funny.
can
I
include
mean,
starters. It's just like no Jokic.
oh, I love the idea of Jamal and or Cam. Like, I don't think
Okay.
we're in the regular season. You're not staggering them both, but I like either of
Why
them.
not?
I mean, if Da wants to go for it, go for it. It's just historically not what we see a lot with the Nuggets, but I would love to
Yeah, we
see
saw a
it.
lot of Jamal Mike staggers last
That's
year.
true. That's true. Yeah, in limited minutes, I'd go for that. Like Jamal, Cam, Jonas, maybe a Pwat, and who am I missing? Duran.
I was going to say there's one right answer here. That's interesting. I was not expecting that. So you basically have Peyton playing the 2. And so you got your lineup from 1 to 5 is Jamal, Peyton, Cam, Duran, and Jonas. That's actually interesting to me. I don't think that's one that a lot of people have contemplated. A lot of people have been
Probably
making
not.
their fake lineups. I don't hate it. I don't hate it because Duran can shoot. Obviously, you don't put a ton of pressure on him to obviously be the 5 and have to do all the rebounding and that kind of stuff. But he can help in that regard, playing the 4, I should say. And he can do a little bit on offense, but doesn't have to. And then Peyton doesn't have to do anything on offense because everybody else on the floor can do more stuff on offense and he can focus on defense. And then Duran gives you that size and length. I like it. I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that.
Different answer for you off the top of my head. But I think regardless, if you're you don't have to necessarily play Pwat at 2. You could play him on a bench lineup at the 3. I like Peyton's perimeter defense and like help recover ability with Jonas to like cover ground, because I think that's where a lot of like mistakes will have to be covered. So it's interesting that we've just talked about Pwat's extension and how much we are kind of low on him, but then I do like that pairing of his skill set with Jonas. But how you fill in around that to cover for defense, like I mean, Bruce comes to mind too, if he might be able to be like quick and scrappy, and then he can be an offensive plus to your team too, in some of those bench minutes, obviously. So you have some more options, but like Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to give you more offense and stuff, but that's not necessarily going to help you on the defense.
If you've got Jamal and Cam out there, you probably don't need Tim. You probably need a little bit more defense out there. You've got Jamal, Cam, and Jonas out there. Those are like the offensive dudes, and then you've got Duran and Peyton spearheading the defense, but Jamal and Cam can also do some stuff, right? The only thing with staggering both Jamal and Cam is that obviously you think about the Jokic minutes, but then like it's not that bad. You're probably in that situation playing Zeke Naji next to Jokic. Maybe not. Yeah, if you've got both Duran and Peyton playing with the bench, you might be playing Zeke Naji next to Jokic, or you're just handcuffing AG to Jokic. I wouldn't hate that either. Right?
Yeah.
And then you have Bruce, Christain, who's playing the 3. You could just have Peyton start and like go into the bench minutes from there, and then he's like kind of 6th man. He and Bruce kind of come in as those first staggers. So Bruce, Christain, Peyton. Who's playing the 4? Did I say it was Zeke? Oh no, you got Bruce, Christain, Peyton, AG, Jokic. That's 3 starters.
Yeah.
That's an 8-man rotation.
Hey, we got all this depth. We're going to be so good, but throwing as many starters as you can.
Is it really an 8-man rotation? Because you got Bruce, Peyton, Duran, and Jonas. That's a 9-man rotation. That's like a fine regular season. Duran, Peyton, Jonas, Bruce. Is that all the bench players that are playing there? Yeah. The power forward position is very awkward, Poppin. It's why I think we need another one. The other thing you could do is just not handcuff AG to Jokic. Or you do handcuff AG, but he's not playing all those minutes. He's like, I get to rest. Zeke, you come in. Right? But I like your idea with the bench lineup. The other one that I had in mind was you swap out Duran for Zeke, and in that case, you need a more offensive-minded 2. Dang. I just basically want to stagger 3 starters with the bench because I'm like, I want Jamal, Christain, and
the most amount of bench player starters you can get in there, the better. But
or you could swap out Duran and AG and play Duran in those minutes with Jokic, but then that's still 3 stars.
I want to handcuff AG.
I just want to play our best players as much as possible. Like
yeah.
Anyway, I loved sharing that stat about Jokic or Jonas's floater. Hopefully, I don't make that mistake too many times. I wonder if we're gonna get any clips out of the Team Lithuania friendlies. I just want to see what kind of condition our asset is with Jonas. I think he's the starting center for that team since Domas is not playing in Eurobasket. That's another thing to definitely look forward to. Will, is there anything else that you want to say to the people before we sign off on this very, very long show that we did today?
Not at all. Just thank you for hanging and sticking with us through these long shows, but that's what makes our show
I know.
fun.
We're getting back to our roots with these 2.5 hour long shows.
This is like the biggest lull of the off
are,
season. You're worried there's nothing to talk about, and this is our longest show of the off season. There you go.
I know. This is what happens. If you've made it this far, we really, really do appreciate you guys that make it to the end of these really long streams. If you do like our content, please remember to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, as well as the notification bell. Leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon Music as well. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, etc. Our social links are in the description. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks, especially losing a negotiation.